Hey, what's up guys? So today we are gonna see, what if Naruto left his home planet with Madara and became Mandalore, Harem, Part 1. Hope you'll enjoy this video. So before we start, go check out the author of this fanfic, Seeker Pendragon. Link is in the description, and also subscribe to my channel, and like this video. Let's begin the video. You are putting an absurd amount of trust in an assassin that has failed us many times, Tyrannies, Darth Sidious said in his usual sickly evil tone, his entire face hidden from view, as he frowned in annoyance. Kneeling before the Sith Lord was Darth Tyrannus himself, or, as others called him, Count Dooku. The elderly man, while seeming to look like a man catching up in his age, was still a powerful and dangerous man to face, regardless if you had other allies to your side. I assure Master, Asajj Ventress will not fail us. New Gunray will be either silenced or reclaimed once she is sent on her mission, Dooku said with confidence in his protégé. Believed that despite her shortcomings and recent failures she would not fail at this task. Sidious frowned at his apprentice, not at all believing the Count's words at all. He would be more inclined to have more faith in Dooku's words if Ventress was not such an incompetent tool. She failed in various tasks, and that displeased him very much so. Her ever-recent blunders still left a foul taste in his mouth. He knows that Yoda was a formidable opponent, but the least she could have done was kill that blasted king of Tadaria. Then again, he did have high expectations when it came to his tools. Regardless of your belief and confidence in your apprentice, I have decided to enlist the help of 2 bounty hunters to help in this task, Sidious states. Dooku narrowed his eyes only slightly. Bounty hunters? Are they trustworthy masters? Dooku asked. The lower visible part of Sidious's face smirked, as she chuckled sinisterly. The 2 bounty hunters I have enlisted are well known, feared among the best of other bounty hunters, even more feared than the Mandalorian bounty hunter known as Jango Fett. The Count's eyes widened, and he sucked in a small breath. You cannot possibly mean, the Count trailed off, as he saw Sidious's smirking face. Yes, I speak of the ruthless and legendary warriors Madara Uchiha, and his nephew Naruto Uchiha. Dooku's breathing hitched, as he heard those names. The image of 2 warriors appearing within his mind, one having long spiked black hair that reached his waist, ruby crimson eyes staring at him with malice and a lust for battle, the other being a stark opposite, as spiked blonde hair that fell just below his shoulder blades, cold sapphire blue eyes glaring at him with such intensity that would send a shiver down anyone's spine. When can I expect them? Dooku asked, hiding the nervousness he felt from hearing those names. He would never forget the first encounter he had with those 2 Mandalorians. Those 2 were truly something to be feared, especially when they were working together. Sidious smirked. They are already tracking the Republic ship. All they are waiting for is the signal. Understood, Master. With his piece said, Sidious cut the transmission just as Asajj Ventress entered the room to receive her new orders from her master. She quickly knelt and lowered her head. Master, I await your orders, she spoke. Dooku slowly turned, giving his apprentice a look that gave away nothing. Viceroy Nuke Gunray must be either reclaimed or silenced before the Republic can gain any information from him. Understood, Master, Ventress stated, preparing to stand and leave to prepare for her next mission. Also, you will be receiving the assistance of 2 bounty hunters. Give them a signal to let them know you've arrived. Tread lightly with them, Dooku warned, as he entered back into his meditating state. Ventress thought of questioning her master, but thought better of it, as she silently turned and quickly left the room. She had a mission to prepare for after all. The clone operators all kept their eyes on their scanners and computer boards. Each one of them worked with efficiency that could only be obtained through years of practice and experience. All of them dutifully kept on their guard and remained in a comfortable yet tense silence. They could not afford even the smallest of laziness or mistakes, not with the high-valued prisoner they had aboard their ship. As it stood, this ship and its crew were the only thing that stood between their prisoner and a separatist rescue party. They would protect this ship and their prisoner with their very lives if need be. Sonar, Trooper Identification Number 1326788963242, kept his eyes on his screen, even as some of his brothers engaged in small conversations now and then. Sonar was a nickname given to him by his brothers for the very reason that he was one of the best when it came to tasks that involved scanning multiple areas at once. He kept his face passive even when he found some of the small conversations amusing. Honestly, who cares about who was the best singer on Coruscant? Certainly not him. A slight beep on his screen caught his attention. Quickly, his eyes snapped to the screen, already searching for a blip to indicate possible enemy contact. Seeing nothing on his screen, he frowned and sighed in annoyance. Great, now his systems were going haywire. What is the Force? One of the clone operators spoke up, silencing activity on the bridge. Curious, everyone on the bridge stared out the window and came upon the sight of a red flash flaring brightly a good distance away from them. The bridge personnel all glanced towards each other, all of them knowing that the flash was a separatist signal flare. Thing was, there were no separatist ships on their scanners. Suddenly their alarms began blazing, as their scanners detected a ship. Sonar quickly spun around to face his screen, and his eyes widened, as he caught sight of a massive figure showing up on his radar. We have a possible hostile ship showing up on the scanners. Impossible! This ship literally just came out of nowhere, he shouted in shock. Silence greeted his shout, and curious as to what the silence was about, Sonar spun in his chair to stare out the window again, and he felt his breath hitch as he stopped breathing. Just outside the window was the most massive ship he had ever laid his eyes upon, making the Malevolence seem like an ant in comparison. Sonar that only saw specks of this ship only once in his life. Immediately after he saw the specks, he mentally declared that creating such a thing was impossible. Yet it was currently staring them in the face, as of this very moment. The ship was metallic black, with an ice-white shine on it, a single blood-red streak running down the middle. It was dagger-shaped in design, similar to Republic cruisers. It was 19,000 meters in length, the thousands of xenon lights illuminating it in the blackness that was space. Its crimson-red engines keep up with a much smaller Republic cruiser. But the thing that shocked Sonar the most was the fact that its design was similar to the prototype dreadnoughts the Republic had yet to even work on. The Executor class, Sonar whispered in shock, awe, and fear. Many things ran through the clone's mind. How did they not detect a ship of that size and magnitude? It's impossible to hide a ship that size. That was the question Sonar desperately wanted answered. That is, until he saw the last few parts of the ship appear, as a light-bending energy stopped surrounding it. That was when it clicked in the clone's mind. A cloaking system, he whispered in disbelief. The commanding officer on the bridge immediately sprang into action, and he pushed several buttons on his console. Commander Tano, General Undilai, we have a possible hostile ship. A moment later the Jedi General's voice rang through the comms. Come again, Commander Melvis? The commander opened his mouth to speak, but was interrupted when one of the operators spoke. The ship's firing, sir. The clone was right, as the Executor-class vessel suddenly fired 3 single ultra-blue shots of energy. The 3 shots connected, and it provided no visible damage to the Republic cruiser. However, blue xenon lighting did dance around the entire Republic ship. So we are losing power to all of the ship's systems. Those were ion cannons that fired upon us, Sonar shouted. Just after he finished that sentence, the Executor-class ship fired 3 more ion shots, and the entire ship rumbled, as it slowly got closer to the massive vessel. We are being pulled in by a tractor beam, another operative yelled out. Sir, a separatist bordering pod has been spotted. What? The commander exclaimed. The ship rumbled, as the pod breached the hangar bay doors, and a few dozen battle droids quickly began marching out, as a shadowy figure sneakily darted out. The ship rumbled a second time, as the Republic cruiser was boarded a second time, as it lay in the clutches of the Executor-class ship. The ship's emergency airlock was brutally destroyed, as dozens of assassin droids entered through, and began mercilessly killing clones. Unlike normal assassin droids, these droids were black instead of the usual white coloring. Their red robotic eyes remained the same, with a few having orange eyes instead. As the hallway was cleared of clones, 2 figures entered the ship through the destroyed airlock. The taller figure had long black hair that spiked in multiple directions, as it reached his waist, crimson-red eyes that glinted with battle lust and disinterest. Black bangs covered the left side of his face, as his lips pulled back into a menacing scowl. He wore crimson-red Mandalorian armor on his torso over his black bodysuit, while the bottom half consisted of black battle robes. A holster was settled on his left hip holding a standard-issue blaster pistol. Clipped to his right hip was the hilt of a lightsaber, a weapon usually reserved for a Jedi. The smaller figure had shoulder-length golden blonde hair that was spiked in multiple directions. 2 bangs framed his whiskered face, as the rest covered his forehead. Sapphire blue eyes that expressed a cold and uncaring air. His lips, like his taller counterpart, were pulled back into a tight scowl. He wore dark orange Mandalorian armor on his torso over a black bodysuit as, like his dark counterpart, the bottom consisted of black battle robes. On his waist were 2 sheathed Mandalorian blades, and blaster pistols holstered on his hips, as well, set apart to allow enough space for his blades to have room. The taller figure crossed his arms, as he stared at the hall of dead troopers with a disinterested air. This is the best the Republic has to offer. How dull and disappointing, he stated. His voice is rich and smooth. His younger companion spared him a glance. You can't expect clones to put up much of a fight, uncle. The blonde spoke up. After all, copies can never outdo the original. The older man hummed in response. True, it's just the fact that these clones were created from Jango's blood. I expected them to be better. Clones, no matter how advanced, will never measure up to the original, the blonde stated. The dark-haired male chuckled. I have taught you quite well, Naruto. Naruto kept his face stoic, as he huffed. Of course you did, Uncle Madara. A surviving clone groaned, As he regained consciousness, the clone shook his head before raising it. As he did so, he stared straight into the barrel of a blaster pistol. He stared beyond it, and was met with two cold sapphire blue eyes that belonged to a young man, a man no older than Commander Tano. The clone had only one thought running through his mind, so young like Commander Tano. With that thought, the sound of a blaster fired off, and blackness covered the clone's vision. Naruto stared at the clone's lifeless body before he holstered his pistol. He looked towards his uncle, who was examining a few of the clone's corpse. "We should split up, uncle. Intel says that there are 2 Jedi aboard this ship. It is likely there is either a master and a knight or Padawan." Naruto spoke. "The Padawan is in the brig, while the master fights off the invaders," Madara suddenly stated. "How do you know?" Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow. "If my ship was being attacked while I had a highly valued prisoner, it's a plan I would do. Leave the student with the prisoner while I, myself, would deal with the invaders personally," Madara explained. "Fair enough," Naruto murmured. "Halt!" Both Madara and Naruto turned their attention to a group of clones who turned the corner and pointed their blaster rifles towards them. Madara scoffed as he continued examining the corpses. "Naruto deals with them, will you?" he murmured. Naruto huffed as he calmly stepped towards the clones. "Stop, or we will open fire!" Naruto narrowed his eyes. "You'll be dead by then." WH-. One of the clones tried to yell out, as Naruto suddenly darted forward with speed that none of the troopers were expecting. The kid moved as fast as a Jedi using the Force. What kind of training did he receive to move that fast? Before any of the troops could react, the blonde disarmed the first clone and sent him back with a kick. Naruto's hand shot up to grip the barrel of another blaster rifle, and he pushed up. As the clone fired his weapon, the laser fire discharged safely into the ceiling. Yanking the rifle from the clone, Naruto spun around and bashed the rifle against the clone's head. Spinning once again, Naruto performs a roundhouse kick into the third clone's kneecap. A loud crack being heard, as the knee was shattered despite the armor the clone was wearing. The clone screamed in pain as he crippled to the floor, cradling his knee as he fell. Before he could fall fully, however, Naruto's hand darted out and seized the clone by the throat, clutching the blonde's hand. As the clone choked to death, the clone struggled for air that would not come. The clone's visored helmet made eye contact with the blonde's sapphire blue eyes, and the only thing the clone could see in those eyes was nothing but coldness. A cold, ruthless pit of no return. Naruto quickly moved the clone he held in his grip and placed him in front of him, shielding his body from blaster fire coming from other clones. Casting the lifeless body away, the blonde upholstered his blaster pistol and fired 4 shots. The shots hit dead on, as they hit 4 other clones in the chest. Naruto quickly evaded blasters by darting left and right, his form surprisingly light and agile considering the armor he wore. Holstering his pistol, Naruto unsheathed his Mandalorian blades, the Mandalorian metal gleaming slightly. In a fashion only a Jedi can do, Naruto deflected several blaster bolts back towards the clones who fired them. Naruto threw his blade, and it pierced itself deep within the final clone, pinning him to the wall, making the clone scream in pain. Slowly making his way towards the clone that was currently experiencing agony, Naruto held him by the throat and spoke in a menacing monotone. "Where is the brig of this vessel?" The clone said nothing, glaring at the blonde beneath his helmet. "You refuse to speak?" Naruto murmured, receiving nothing but silence. Frowning, as he shut his eyes, Naruto sighed. "I see." Slowly the blonde's eyes opened, ruthless sapphire eyes glaring coldly at the clone. "Then you are worthless." With that said, with a jerk of his hand, a crack sounded off signifying the clone's death. As Naruto broke his neck, Naruto threw the body aside and walked towards Madara, who was now standing, as he inspected a clone's comlink. "Did you find anything, uncle?" Madara opened up the comlink and pulled out the chip inside it. He placed the chip inside his comlink that was embedded within his gauntlet, and he crushed the Republic comlink in his left hand. Silently, he began adjusting his radio frequency until he found what he was looking for. "Naruto, switch to radio frequency number 00069288973, Madara ordered. Naruto did as he was told, and when he adjusted the frequency, he immediately heard the chatter of Republic clones on his comlink. "Now we can know what the enemy are doing, and we will be privy to whatever plan they conjure up," Madara started with a smirk. Shortly after Madara's sentence, the voice of a female was heard, as the sounds of battle echoed in the background. "Padawan Tano, the enemy closest to the brig, has been dealt with. I shall now begin moving to assist clones in pushing back the enemy. You continue guarding Gunray. Ensure he does not even take a single step out of his cell." It wasn't long before another voice responded. "Understood, Master Underlie. Our good friend here won't be going anymore." "So the Padawan is guarding the prisoner, eh?" "Just as I predicted," Madara mused. Quickly he glanced towards his nephew. "Naruto deals with the Padawan, I will take on the Jedi Master." "Understood, uncle," Naruto stated, as he turned around and began moving down the hall, his robes ruffled, as his footsteps echoed down the hall. Madara smirked as he began walking down the halls, the mere thought of fighting a Jedi sending a shiver of pleasure down his spine. It had been so long since he had ever fought a Force user. He can still remember the fun he had when he had fought against the Sith Lord and a Jedi Master. He licked his lips, as he hoped that this Jedi would prove to be as good as the last one he fought. If not, then the Separatists will have no need to worry about another Jedi General. Looks like your rescue has just been neutralized, Viceroy. You may sit back in your cell, as comfortably as you can. Ahsoka lightly taunted with a slight grin. Viceroy Nuke Gunray sighed in depression, as he sat back down. I am ready to reopen negotiations, he started in defeat. Commander Gly shook his head at the Viceroy of the Trade Federation. Without all the money and wealth, the Viceroy was just a coward. To be honest, it disgusted Gly a little. He was a warrior, bred and trained, so he couldn't help but feel a little disgusted with the Viceroy. Good boy, Ahsoka said with a grin on her features. Commander Gly felt a bit of amusement at Commander Tano's taunts. To be honest, he wanted to taunt the Viceroy himself. Thing was, they weren't out of the woodworks just yet. So until then he couldn't let his guard down for a second. The Senate Commandos also seemed to share his amusement, as they released small but brief chuckles. The captain of the Senate Commandos openly chuckled, as he leaned back against the wall. Well, since your rescue party has been dealt with, how about we start off our conversation where we left off before your rescue? Ahsoka asked, grinning toothily at the Viceroy. Gunray audibly gulped. Why did the trigger-happy Padawan have to stay with him? Yes, so where were we? Gunray began, trying to stall for time. Ahsoka opened her mouth to speak, but was interrupted, as a loud cricket-like sound was heard down the hall. Igniting her lightsaber, Ahsoka kept on alert. The clones, and the Senate Commandos with her pointing their blaster rifles down the hall, half of them expecting an enemy to emerge out of nowhere. For several long moments there was nothing but pure silence. Finally, Ahsoka couldn't take it any longer. She quietly motioned for her men to remain where they were while she went to investigate. She walked down the hall, and she noted several of the clones in the brig control room unconscious. She would have loved to check on their condition, but it was too dangerous with a possible hostile in the area. Seeing nothing, she was prepared to head back. That is until she saw the elevator shaft left wide open. Switching off her lightsaber, the Padawan slowly moved towards the shaft, only a few steps away, and suddenly her feet got tangled in something. Looking down, she saw her feet tangled in the thinnest black wire she had ever seen. It was so thin in fact that she had to squint her eyes to spot it. She followed the length of the wire, and she noted how it led directly down the shaft of the elevator. One thought ran through Ahsoka's mind at that moment. Before she could finish her curse, she was suddenly pulled forward by her feet, and pulled down the shaft. She screams in shock and fear the entire time. She vaguely heard a shout of commander, but that was blocked out by her screams of terror, as she fell down the elevator shaft. Suddenly she just stopped, but it was short-lived, as she was dragged down the hall of one of the many floors of the ship. She was pulled into the mess hall of the ship, and she noted the dozens of dead clones that littered the mess hall, as she was strung up upside down. She shook her head to rid herself of the stars forming in her. Instinctively she ignited her lightsaber, as her tendrils warned her of an incoming threat. Positioning her lightsaber in front of her neck in a blocking position, she was just in time to stop a steel blade from burying itself in her neck. Her other hand came up, and grabbed a hand that held a blaster pistol. She forcibly guided the hand to just above her feet, just as it discharged. The shot ripped through the wire binding her legs, setting her free. Spinning in midair, her leg shot out, and struck her attacker in the chest, pushing him back. Not bad, a neutral voice spoke out, a hint of being impressed being heard. Ahsoka gritted her teeth, as she immediately assumed that the owner of this voice killed the clones in this room. Her ocean blue eyes snapped up, and glared fiercely into the eyes of a human who was no older than her. Ahsoka felt surprised, as she saw someone her own age group glaring at her with cold eyes. He's the same age as me, yet his eyes are so cold, she thought. Naruto tilted his head, as he raised a slender blonde eyebrow at the Togruta female. You're surprised, he stated, taking Ahsoka out of her thoughts. Are you surprised that someone your own age has just killed all the clones in this room? Or are you surprised that you have met someone your age on the battlefield fighting on the other side? Naruto stated. A little of both, to be honest, Ahsoka admitted, tightening her grip on her lightsaber, as she remembered the dead clones that lay at his feet. Why did you kill them? She asked with her teeth grit. Naruto titled his head once more. Are you upset? Do you feel anger? Anger at the fact that they all died at my hands, or anger at yourself for not saving them? The blonde Mandalorian stated. Each word makes Ahsoka's grip on her blade of light tighten. Don't worry, they all died honorably. They died fighting to the end, like true warriors, Naruto suddenly stated. No matter how hopeless it seemed, they kept fighting, unafraid of death. Such a thing deserves the highest degree of respect. You are in command of fine warriors, the blonde said, his voice carrying a tone of respect towards the deceased clones. Even clones deserve the respect that came with being warriors, especially ones that died, as such. Thanks, Ahsoka murmured, a bit taken aback at the young man's words. In doing so, however, she let her guard down, something that Naruto capitalized on, as he fired a single shot aimed at Ahsoka's head. Ahsoka blinked, as she instinctively deflected the blaster bolt with her lightsaber. The green blade vibrating loudly at the bolt was deflected. She brought her lightsaber up just in time to stop Naruto's steel blade from burying itself in her waist. What the hell? I thought we were having a pretty decent conversation, Ahsoka yelled with her teeth bared. Naruto's eyes continued to glint coldly, as he pushed his blade against Ahsoka's. That's the problem. We are not friends, we are enemies. You let your guard down, and I capitalized on it. As is the way of the battlefield, Naruto stated. Bringing his knee up, the blonde Mandalorian bashed his knee into Ahsoka's midriff. With one arm holding her midriff, Ahsoka jumped back just as Naruto holstered his blaster pistol and unsheathed his second blade, which he tried to bury into Ahsoka's torso, but was able to, as she jumped back. Undeterred, Naruto sprang forward, his dual blades clashing violently with Ahsoka's green lightsaber, as sparks generated each time the two blades connected. Naruto spun and kicked Ahsoka in the torso, sending the Padawan flying back due to the force of the kick. Flipping in midair, Ahsoka vertically landed on the wall, and with the power of the Force launched herself towards the blonde-haired Mandalorian. It was Naruto's time to remain on the defensive, as Ahsoka violently attacked him. Her attack pattern is relentless. Ahsoka's attacks were quick and effective, as Naruto had to constantly move around the girl's lightsaber, as it was close to dismembering a limb multiple times. Ahsoka jumped and spun in midair, her lightsaber seeming to be a whirlwind of green. Naruto, seeing his chance, once again kicked the Togruta female into the air, and crashed outside the mess hall. Not wanting her to get away, the blonde quickly followed. Ahsoka shook herself off the stars forming her head, and quickly to the side, as Naruto's blades buried themselves deep within the steel floor of the ship. Abandoning the blades, Naruto's gauntlets suddenly opened, as two 3-inch long blades darted out. With his wrist blades revealed, Naruto darted towards the Jedi Padawan, and like he was fist fighting, the blonde threw a series of quick jabs and stabs, Ahsoka being forced to dodge each one, as the blonde's wrist blades would have surely killed her. As the two fought, they gradually moved down the hall. In doing so, they stumbled upon the scene of a group of clones combating against several assassins' droids. The assassin droids were crawling all over the walls, taking fire, yet also returning fire furiously. A clone noted their commander fighting against the blonde, and deciding to end their battle with the droids, he threw a droid popper. He succeeded in taking several of the assassin droids, but not all. That seemed to be enough for the clone, as he gathered several other clones and moved down the hall in the direction in which Ahsoka and Naruto were battling. Spotting the two still engaging in battle, the clone pointed his rifle, his brothers following his lead. Blast him, the clone shouted out. In an instant, the clones followed that order, as they opened fire. Naruto, hearing the sounds of blaster fire, spun and deflected several bolts of blaster rifles with his right wrist blade while the other held Ahsoka in a blade lock. Kicking the Padawan away, Naruto in a show of acrobatics began cartwheeling towards the clones, dodging blaster fire, and occasionally deflecting some, as he did so. When he was a foot away from the clones, he grabbed the rifle of one, and yanked it from the clone's grip. He followed up by burying his knee into the clone's torso, and fired several bolts at the other clones forcing them to take cover. Throwing the rifle away, Naruto buried his wrist blade into the clone's unprotected neck, the clone's blood splattering and dripping on the floor. Throwing the body aside, Naruto darted forward. He caught the rifle of a clone who tried smashing it against his temple. Before the clone could react, Naruto buried his wrist blade into the clone's temple, blood dripping down his gauntlets, as he used the clone's body as a meat shield against blaster fire from the final three clones. Jumping forward, the blonde kicked one clone in the head, and sent him flying against the ground. Naruto then spun, and kicked under the feet of the second clone who tried aiming his rifle at him. As the clone fell, Naruto's arm shot out, and buried his wrist blades into the clone's chest, blood splattering about, as the blade penetrated the armor, chest, and heart of the clone. Naruto ducked just as the third clone tried hitting him with an axe kick, and the blonde stabbed the clone multiple times in the chest, blood spraying everywhere, as the clone's liquid of life flowed out relentlessly. Reacting on instinct, Naruto spun around, and his wrist blades slit the throat of the clone he had kicked earlier. The clone began choking on his own blood, as he slowly fell to his knees. However, Naruto wouldn't allow it, as he wrapped his arms around the clone's neck. A loud snap was heard, as Naruto broke the clone's neck, and allowed the corpse to fall on the ground. The blonde Mandalorian paid no mind to the blood staining his gauntlets. Naruto spun, and brought up his wrist blades in a blocking position just in time, as Ahsoka attacked him. Their blades clashed violently, as they entered in a blade lock, anger brimming in Ahsoka's eyes after she witnessed the death of the clones who had tried to assist her. Pushing the blonde away, Ahsoka began to attack relentlessly, her strikes holding a great deal of more strength and power. Slowly, but gradually she began pushing Naruto back, each strike seeming to have a chance at ending Naruto's life. Yet the blonde's stoic and calm expression never left his face, instead a type of certain intrigue and slight amusement danced in the blonde's eyes. Finally having enough, Ahsoka held her hand out, and Naruto's eyes widened as he was pushed back violently. The blonde Mandalorian was slammed against the wall with bone-shattering force, and he slid down the wall. His form slouched over, as he groaned softly. Shaking his head free of forming stars, Naruto lifted his head groggily, only to be met with the sight of a green blade of light an inch away from his face. The Togruta female he was fighting had her face relatively close enough that Naruto was able to get a very good look of her face, and her fierce ocean blue eyes that held determination and a courageous will. "I win," Ahsoka said with a slight grin. Naruto blinked for a moment, before he smirked slightly. "So it seems it isn't a Jedi?" he said with a small chuckle. "What's your name?" Naruto asked, his sapphire blue eyes connecting with Ahsoka's ocean blue orbs. Ahsoka stared back into his eyes, her grin remaining on her face. "Ahsoka Tano, a Jedi Knight or soon will be anyway," she added sheepishly. "What's yours?" Togruta asked with a slight tilt of her head. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki Uchiha, Ahsoka Tano," Naruto answered, giving her his full name. "Pleasure to meet you," Ahsoka said. Naruto raised an eyebrow. "Don't you mean meat?" "Nope," Ahsoka said, popping the P. "You do know that if it wasn't for your precious force I would have one." Naruto started with a raised eyebrow. Ahsoka smirked. "Keep telling yourself that," she said. Naruto chuckled, and he smiled. But it was a smile unlike Ahsoka had ever seen in her life. Most of the smiles she saw were of compassion, and smirks of confidence, and the occasional smiles that were filled with arrogance. But the smile the blonde was giving was cold. It was dangerous, and I had a cold smile. And Naruto's eyes glinted with cold mischief. Before Ahsoka could react, Naruto suddenly leaned up, and bashed his head against Ahsoka's. Ahsoka's eyes widened in shock, as she was pushed off the blonde. Her hand came up to her head, trying to quell the stinging, as Naruto had quite a hard head. Naruto capitalized on her stunned state, and roughly pushed her off him, spinning, and kicking her away. The feeling of flying through the air brought Ahsoka out of her funk, and she immediately righted herself, her feet softly touching the ground, as she composed herself. With a growl Ahsoka glared at the blonde Mandalorian. "Cheap shot," Naruto smirked over in her direction, as he pointed his finger at her. "A savvy warrior uses all the tools he or she has at his or her disposal." He finished with half-lidded eyes, a lazy smirk on his face, as his eyes remained gleaming with cold mischief. "That was cheating," Ahsoka yelled in outrage. Naruto smirked at the Togruta female. "Cheating? Please, there is no such thing as cheating, especially in war. On the battlefield you must be willing to do things you normally would never do, and things you may hate yourself for doing." The blonde crossed his arms. "Of course you Jedi know nothing of what I speak of. Are you insulting the Jedi Order? At least we don't cheat," Ahsoka growled out. Naruto smirked. "Oh, don't get me wrong, cheating is never a good thing to do, but when it's come to the battlefield, caring about cheating will only get in the way," the blonde Mandalorian stated. Ahsoka growled slightly. "I don't care, the fact is you got a cheap shot at me," she stated. Suddenly Naruto scowled, as his eyes glinted coldly, his air of mischief leaving him, as he glared at the female Togruta with such coldness that it made Ahsoka shiver for a moment. "Well then, it seems that our battle must continue onward," he started with ice in his tone, his wrist blades gleaming with bloodlust. The blonde tensed his legs, before dashing towards the Jedi Padawan, as said Padawan readied her lightsaber. However, before the two fighters could clash, an explosion that destroyed the wall occurred. One figure was sent flying through the smoke, and the smoke parted to reveal the form of Jedi General Unduli, who had several injuries. As she steadied herself, from the other side of the destroyed wall emerged Madara, his face sporting a large smirk, as his silver lightsaber trembled, as an unstable aura surrounded. The silver blade literally radiates raw power. The black hair of Mandalorian's armor was scratched, and he had a few cuts on his face, his wound leaking small amounts of blood. Despite his wounds, Madara kept his smirk, as his crimson eyes glinted maliciously with bloodlust. "Master Unduli!" Ahsoka shouted in worry, yet she kept her position, not wanting their foes to take advantage. "Padawan Tano?" Luminara said in confusion, wondering why the Padawan was here. "Oh, you were fighting here, Naruto," Madara mused, as he glanced at his nephew in amusement. "Sorry for ruining your fun." Naruto sighed. "No need to worry, uncle. This should make things interesting, however. 2 Jedi versus the 2 of us. It should prove to be an interesting situation." Luminara narrowed her eyes, as she tensed, warily keeping her eyes on the two, as Ahsoka slowly took position alongside her. The two Jedi were prepared for just about anything, as the two females glared at the Mandalorian bounty hunters. "This is gonna be fun," Madara said in excitement. His blood raced through his body, as he felt the thrill of battle engulf his being. Naruto smirked, as well as he felt the feeling of excitement and anticipation. Madara and Naruto were just about a moment away from charging the two Jedi, before suddenly their communicators beeped. The two froze, and they glanced at their communicators, noting that they were blinking with a xenon blue light. To the confusion of the two Jedi, both Madara and Naruto's faces turned blank, as they sheathed their weapons. Their stances lost all hostility. Yet there was a certain disappointment in the air between the two. Slowly, Madara raised his communicator to mouth level. "Attention all assassin droids, our objective has been completed. Prepare for departure immediately," Madara announced, his voice shocking the two Jedi beyond belief. Without a word, the two Mandalorians turned, and began walking away from the two Jedi. "Wait," Ahsoka yelled, making the two stop, and glance over at her. "You think you can just attack a Republic cruiser, and walk away scot-free?" she yelled in disbelief. "Young Ahsoka speaks the truth. In the name of the Republic Senate you two are under arrest." Luminara spoke firmly. Madara laughed. It was a cold and condescending laugh. "Fools," he insulted, making the two Jedi narrow their eyes. "Did you think we were attacking this ship for no reason? Don't be foolish. There is only one piece of cargo here that we would possibly be interested in, and that piece of cargo has already been busted out, as far as we can tell," the black-haired man said. Luminara's eyes widened, with Ahsoka's following soon after. "You're here for Gunray," Ahsoka shouted. This time it was Naruto who spoke. "Wrong. Our job was to ensure that everyone's focus remained on this attack. Our job was to distract you, while a separatist envoy safely got to Gunray, and to ensure they got away safely." The blonde smirked. "If you hurry, you can still catch them," he taunted. Madara chuckled. "You have a choice, Jedi. Chase us down or go after your precious cargo." With that said, both Mandalorian ran down the halls, intent on reaching their ship. "Ahsoka!" Luminara yelled. "Gotcha!" Ahsoka shouted in response, as the two Jedi ran after the Mandalorians. "All hands, be on the lookout for Viceroy Nuke Gunray. He has escaped his cell, and he must be recaptured. Be warned, he may have a separatist agent escorting him." Undulai shouted at her communicator, as both she and Ahsoka continued chasing after the Mandalorians. Madara glanced behind him. As he ran, Naruto following in step behind him. "So they decided to come after us after all," the Uchiha mused. Naruto huffed. "They are probably only chasing, as we are the closest to them. They'll forget all about us should they cross Gunray's path," Naruto commented. Madara smirked. "Very accurate," the black-haired Mandalorian stated. Naruto brought his communicator to mouth level, idly noting how several dozen of their assassin droids began covering their escape. Of course it was all for naught, as the Jedi easily cut through them. "Blanc, prepare the ship for disembarking. Our objective has been completed." It was silent, before a female voice answered. "Gotcha, the Susanu's engines are prepping, and its weapons systems are heating up," Blanc said with a stoic and detached tone of voice. Yet despite its monotone, the tiniest hint of happiness could be detected. "Why is it she is always so damn happy with you, but spiteful and downright hateful of me?" Madara deadpanned. "Because I hate you, shitty bastard," Blanc stated bluntly. Her voice loses the hidden undertone of happiness, making it sound plain, deadpanned, and emotionless. "A woman should not curse as recklessly as you are doing," Madara scolded with a scowl. "Well, excuse my shitty language. If you're going to do something about it, do it, shit stain," Blanc started with a growl. "You are such a brat, Blanc," Madara stated. A growl was heard from the communicator. "I told you, bastard. Naruto is the only one allowed to call me Blanc. You, and like all the others, will only refer to me as Whiteheart," Blanc hissed in anger. Madara smirked. "It seems the little brat is forgetting her place once again." "Enough," Naruto interrupted. "Stop instigating, Uncle, and Blanc, just focus on getting the Susanoo prepped. We have two Jedi chasing us. Let those damn Jedi in my ship. I'll be sure to let them see what a real goddess can do," Blanc murmured. Madara scoffed. "The Susanoo is not your ship. It's mine. I built it, so it's mine, you bastard," Blanc yelled. Naruto sighed, as he pinched his nose. Then shut off his communicator, and glared at his uncle half-heartedly. "You really need to stop aggravating her," he murmured. Madara chuckled in amusement. "I can't help it. It amuses me, knowing that I can get under the skin of a goddess," he said with a smirk. "That's only because Blanc gets angered easily," Naruto deadpanned. "Details?" Madara waved off. "Halt!" a clone shouted, as the two turned a corner. Instantly those clones were dealt with swiftly, as both Madara and Naruto jumped over them, and kicked each one in the head with bone-shattering force. The two continued running undeterred, and Madara glanced behind them, smirking at the two Jedi. Let's see how they like my gift, he said. Bringing up his comm link, he pushed a button on it, and the ship rumbled, as a muffled explosion was heard. The Jedi froze for a single moment before they continued chasing the two Mandalorians. There's the airlock, Naruto stated, seeing the airlock they entered the ship from. Indeed it is, Madara smirked. The two Mandalorians ran through the airlock, entering their ship. As they did so, the last few assassins blocked the Jedi's entrance to their ship. Ahsoka and Luminara cut through them swiftly, and barged within the Executor-class vessel. Mere moments after they entered the ship they froze, their eyes widened in shock. And Master Luminara, Ahsoka whispered, a soft whimper in her voice. I know, Ahsoka, Luminara whispered, shockingly filling her voice as well. The presence they were sensing aboard this ship was far more powerful and vast than anything they had ever sensed in their lives. It felt insanely powerful, and also rich in pure energy, as well. It felt bright, and it seemed to silently bask the entire ship in an eternal light. It was almost as if the two Jedi were in the presence of a godly being. Luminara and Ahsoka froze, as they felt something penetrating their minds. They tried with all their might to resist, but in the end it was not to be. Moments after having their minds infiltrated, a female voice spoke, her tone bored, a hint of condensation, and a small amount of anger. Get off of my ship, Jedi. You are not welcome here. With that said, both Ahsoka and Luminara were shocked even more when they felt themselves being forced back. It took a moment for them to realize that the being forcing them back was not even using the Force. Within another moment, both Ahsoka and Luminara were launched out of the ship, and back into their Republic cruiser. Moments after their forced to exit, the massive ship that held the Republic cruiser in its clutches disembarked, its boarding tube disconnecting, and rescinding back inside of the Executor-class vessel. The Republic cruiser drifted away, and the massive vessel slowly moved into position to enter hyperspace. However, before it could enter hyperspace, 3 Republic cruisers dropped out of hyperspace. In a show of power, and to instill fear, the massive Executor-class warship began firing upon the Republic cruisers, thousands of bolts of cannon fire pummeling the 3 ships with fierce firepower. The 3 Republic ships did not last long against the massive ship, as it lay waste to them in mere moments. 2 of the Republic cruisers were destroyed, while the third one was damaged beyond repair. The crimson-red engines of the ship fired up once more, and the xenon-illuminated ship disappeared into hyperspace, leaving nothing but destroyed Republic ships in its wake. Aboard her ship, Luminara watched on grimly while Ahsoka watched on in horror. Her blue eyes stayed on the destroyed Republic cruisers. This is a dark day for the Republic, Luminara stated solemnly. General Unduli, Commander Tano, greeted a clone wearing the standard white armor with the exception of green attributes to them. Luminara glanced at the clone commander GLY. What news do you bring of Nuke Gunray? He got away, sir. The captain of the Senate Guard betrayed us. Also Asajj Ventress was reported to be seen with them, sir. They used the Republic transport to make their getaway, sir, Commander GLY answered. I see, Luminara murmured. So not only did we get our butts handed to us, we lost Gunray, as well. Great, Ahsoka commented. We must inform the council of this development, Luminara murmured, turning on her heel and walking down the hall. Ahsoka and Commander watched her go, before Ahsoka turned her gaze out the window, her blue eyes gazing at the stars of space. Naruto Uchiha, she thought with a clenched fist. Naruto released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, as he walked down the gray halls of the Susanoo. The Executor-class vessel has large hallways, large enough to fit in a brigade or two. Beside him, his uncle walked, his usual scowl on his face, though it was less pronounced and more softened to a slight degree. Naruto knew why. Their home planet Mandalore would not welcome them just for upholding the old Mandalorian traditions, and because of Duchess Satine more and more Mandalorians who wished to embrace old traditions were either being banished from Mandalore or kept very close eyes on. To both Naruto and Madara, this ship, the Executor-class vessel known only as Susanoo, was their new home. Yet, without Blanc's help, they would have never been able to complete the building process of this ship in their lifetime. It was through her that this ship was built in several months rather than years. It made Naruto all the more grateful for crashing into her planet all those months ago. Thinking of how he and Madara first crash-landed on Blanc's planet got the blonde thinking, were the rest of the goddesses doing well without her? Was Vert still playing those MMO games she loved so much? Was Noir still trying to constantly improve last station? Was Neptune still being so lazy and irresponsible? Was Lower doing fine without Blanc's presence? Were Blanc's sisters doing well enough on their own? Granted, he knew that the twins could always ask the other goddesses and their sisters for help. The blonde still couldn't help but worry for them. Thinking about Blanc's home planet made Naruto think. It's been 2 months since Blanc decided she wanted to travel with the 2 Mandalorians, more specifically him, as her dislike for Madara was no secret. Reluctantly she had dropped her responsibilities and entrusted them to her younger sisters to care for Lower and its people. 2 months of her traveling with them, and while she is generally stoic most of the time, Naruto could tell she was happy. Being able to witness the galaxy, the various alien species, her newly acquired books from various other planets. Yet behind it he could still see she was homesick. Despite being able to contact her sisters and being kept up to date on Louis's condition, Naruto could tell she wished to visit Lower, to feel the cold air of Lower on her skin, to bask in the almost magical air that surrounded Lower, the serenity in the air. Louis was not called the land of white serenity for nothing. Another thought sprang to Naruto's mind. Was Blanc receiving enough shared energy? The source of her godly powers. What was the blonde thinking? Of course she was. In the time she traveled with them, not once did she ever look like she wasn't receiving shared energy. If anything, she looked as if she was receiving a little more shared energy than usual. Naruto mused that her little sisters were doing an excellent job of keeping their shared energy input as best as they could. Idly noting that he and his uncle were now in an elevator, the blonde's thoughts once again went towards Blanc. His cold, neutral eyes softened as a soft expression came over his face. He gave a slight sigh. Curse it all. Why did he have to have such a large soft spot for Blanc? With a slight smile, Naruto decided on their destination. Besides, his uncle probably Miss Vert as well. Sparing a glance towards his uncle, Naruto narrowed his eyes when he caught sight of Madara's playful smirk. Naruto recognized that smirk. It was a smirk that very often had when she was making fun of Blanc for being as underdeveloped as she was. Uncle, Naruto spoke up. His uncle gave him a glance, a single black eyebrow raising slightly. Do not try to aggravate Blanc today, he more or less demanded it. Madara stared at him for several moments before he sighed. No promises, Naruto. Making fun of her is just so damn easy, he said with a grin. That's because she has a dangerously short temper, Naruto murmured, remembering the times when Blanc got angered or enraged. He shivered when he remembered that she could pull that hammer literally out of nowhere. Especially the fact that the godforsaken hammer can transform into a battle axe when she transforms into her HDD form. Calming down an angered Blanc is one difficult task. The only ones who ever successfully managed to do that was him, the other 3 goddesses, their sisters, and her own little sisters. Everyone else was either smashed to bits by a hammer and bisected by a battle axe depending on what form she was in. Hearing the hiss of the elevator door opening, Naruto sighed and stepped out, followed by his uncle. The sound of fingers typing on a computer board being heard through the bridge of Susanoo. Several assassins' droids manning the controls. Blanc, Naruto said, staring at the back of a chair that was positioned in front of the holo projector. The typing sound stopped, and the chair was turned around, as a girl stood from the chair. Blanc is a short, petite, pale-skinned girl. She has short, sandy brown-colored hair reaching her neck, and dull blue eyes. On the top of her head she wears a big white cap with light blue ruffles, and a brown and gold under and centerpiece. She wore a white dress with dark brown lining and markings on it. Around her neck is a light blue choker with a single white stripe in the middle, and blue gems/badge in the center. She also wears power blue sandals with a white ribbon around in her right leg resembling a bandage. Blanc stared at the blonde with dull blue eyes, expressing a tiniest amount of happiness at seeing him. Naruto. While her voice was stoic, generally emotionless, but if one tried hearing deep enough they would hear the smallest amount of joy. Her lips curled into a small smile. Naruto offered her a small smile as he looked upon the petite girl. I trust you weren't bored while me and my uncle were performing our job. Blanc shook her head, her sand brown hair swaying as she did so. No, between reading a book and piloting the Susanoo, I've been kept fairly entertained, she answered in a dull, emotionless tone. Naruto chuckled softly. I'm glad. Then the blonde's eyes brightened slightly. I brought you a small souvenir. Before engaging that Padawan I fought, I hacked into their ship's archive. There was lots of info of their tactics, strategy, and their secret bases. Things that the Trade Federation would kill for. But I know such things don't interest you, so instead I downloaded all of the holobooks they had. Naruto smiled. I know how much you love stories that include adventure, drama, and many others that are in many genres. So I copied them all into this so you can upload them into your terminal. The blonde Mandalorian finished, handing the sandy brown-haired girl a small memory core. Blanc took the memory core, and she held it close to her, as she offered Naruto a small smile. Thank you, Naruto. Naruto's smile widened a bit more, as he stared into Blanc's eyes. While she was stoic and emotionless most of the time, to him her emotions were an open book to him. She just had a difficult time freely expressing those emotions, but it was one of the main reasons why he liked Blanc so much. After all, Blanc wouldn't be herself if she freely expressed her emotions. This is so cute it's going to make me gag, Madara deadpanned. In an instant Blanc's stoic look was replaced with anger and irritation, as she gave Madara an angry glare. Her eyes narrowed in distaste, as her angered blue eyes set upon Madara's form. No one asked for your opinion, bastard, she said harshly, her tone angered. Naruto's sweat dropped, as he gave his uncle an annoyed look. Of course there was also Blanc's temper he forgot to mention, although Naruto liked to believe it suited her well. So much for not aggravating her uncle, Naruto murmured. Madara opened his mouth to speak, but was interrupted when an alert popped up on the viewing screen. Blanc was typing on one of the consoles on the bridge in an instant. Her delicate fingers weaved through streams of data. "We have a transmission incoming," she murmured aloud. Madara grunted, as he moved in front of the hologram projector, Naruto following in next to him. "Patch it through on the holo projector," Madara ordered. In a moment, a hologram appeared in front of Madara, and Naruto narrowed his eyes as he saw the hooded form of Sidious. "Ah, Darth Sidious. As you probably already know, Nuke Gunray has been returned to the custody of the Separatists. I don't know who you sent to achieve Gunray, but I must say I am impressed with your agent. They were able to sneak in during our distraction, and we didn't even know they did so until they activated the all-clear signal," Madara complimented, and he meant it too. "It is not often that you meet someone who can sneak inside of a war zone and escort a VIP out safely. I'll be sure to tell our agent of your compliments. On to other matters. Your services in reclaiming Gunray have been invaluable. Your payment has already been transferred into your accounts. All 500,000 credits, as promised," the Dark Lord said. Madara grinned. "It's been a pleasure working with you." Sidious gave a large sickly grin. "Beware that in the future I will require more of your services. In fact, I already have an assignment for you." Hearing this, Naruto couldn't help but frown. He glanced at Blanc, noting how the little goddess was glaring at the hologram of the Sith Lord. Pursing his lips, the blind-sighted, as his plans of visiting Blanc's home planet were placed on hold. Meanwhile, Madara raised an eyebrow as he regarded the hologram of the Sith. "Oh, a job so soon after our last one? Interesting. What are the details?" he asked. Sidious grinned. "The recent strings of failures that General Grievous has wrought has displeased me greatly. I fear that the general may not be cut out for this war any longer. Therefore I have already set about a test for him of sorts. I ask that should he be captured, you terminate him. Should he survive or succeed in his test, then that is of no consequence. You shall still be paid whether he lives or dies." "Oh, interesting. What's the payment? How are you willing to pay?" Madara asked. "Money is of no consequence. However, considering the danger this mission could be, does 90,000 credits sound suitable?" Sidious asked. "Why, Darth Sidious," Madara began, his bangs obscuring his eyes from view, as a large ominous grin overtook his features. "I do believe you have just bought our services for a little while longer," Madara stated, as his crimson-red eyes seemed to glow behind his bangs. Naruto sighed, as he folded his arms, mentally preparing to go on yet another job. Blanc merely glared out the window, the millions of stars darting past them, as they were still in hyperspace. Darth Sidious's sickly voice was heard through the bridge, as it remained in a tense silence. Good, Sidious said with a maddening laugh. To Naruto, that laugh was annoying and angering. To Blanc's ears, that laugh was maddening. It pissed her off way more than anything in her long life. Her dull blue eyes changed into a pinkish-red color, her pupil turning white with a white half-circle forming underneath it. Her hair seemed to change, as well, 2 bangs trying to grow longer, and her hair changing into a silvery sky-blue color. But the change was halted, as Blanc took a deep breath, calming her anger slightly, as her hair returned to normal. However, her eyes remained unchanged. "How much time do we have to prepare?" Madara asked. "I shall inform you of the details tomorrow. There are still a few things that must be prepared," Sidious stated before the transmission was cut off from his end. Madara smirked as he leaned back in his chair. "It seems we will be having a more permanent client from now on," the black-haired Mandalorian murmured. Both Blanc and Naruto shared a glance, the both of them not trusting the Sith Lord they found themselves doing business with. Without saying a word, they agreed to not express their concerns, although they would keep an eye on this Sith Lord, but for now they would remain silent on their concerns. After all, out of all the clients they had, Sidious was the one who paid the best amount of money. They would complete whatever mission that was given to them. After all, they were bounty hunters, and bounty hunters don't say no to money. In the meantime, they would wait for Sidious's call, but until then, "Madara, what did you say about me, you bastard?" Blanc raged, her bangs obscuring her eyes, leaving only one glowing red demonic eye. Her teeth are turning triangular. Madara merely smirked, as he made another comment about Blanc being a flat-chested child. That made Blanc snap, as she summoned her hammer in a flash of light. "Come here, and say that to my face, bastard," Blanc roared in murderous rage. With that said, she began chasing the black-haired Mandalorian, Madara laughing, as he nimbly dodged strikes of her hammer. Naruto could only place his face in his hands, as he sighed, rubbing his temples, as he tried to soothe the oncoming headache. "Uncle, sometimes I wonder if you have a death wish, Baka." Naruto sighed. "At least Vert wasn't here. She would have made things worse." He sighed again, as he moved towards Blanc's enraged form. As it stands, he's the only one who can calm her down at the moment. I'm gonna be smashing you with this hammer until you resemble nothing but a pile of shit on the ground, you asshole. He just hoped that the damage to the ship wouldn't be too much. Crash, he sighed in depression. Now you know where most of the money they get from missions are spent on. And that concludes the report, Master Windu, Luminara finished explaining, her tone grim, eyes solemn, as she finished her report. Beside her Ahsoka remained quiet, her head held down dejectedly. In front of the duo were the hollow forms of Mace Windu, Master Yoda, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker, and Chancellor Palpatine. So not only did we lose Gunray, we also lost 3 Republic ships along with 2 being damaged critically. Obi-Wan summarized grimly. Forget Gunray, Anakin cut in. I'm more interested in the bounty hunters that helped in Gunray's escape. You say the ship they were using was unlike any other. What did you mean by that? We couldn't really get a good look at it, considering our ship was under it the entire time. Me and young Ahsoka were on board it for a brief time, but one of our men, who was able to get a good look at the vessel, provided us with a hologram of it. Luminara began. This is the ship, Master Skywalker. With that said, Luminara pushed a button on the console, and suddenly another hologram came to life. Masters Windu, Yoda, and Obi-Wan raised eyebrows when Anakin released a shocked gasp, and Palpatine murmured in "Oh my. Is there something you're not telling us about Anakin?" Obi-Wan, wondering at his former apprentice's reaction, followed by Windu, Yoda, and the only 2 female Jedi. That ship, Anakin gulped slightly. That ship shouldn't exist. Heck, that ship is literally the only one of its kind at the moment. Recently, as you know, demand for more Republic ships is high. Anakin began, except more battleships are being demanded, ships with more firepower than our Venator-class ships have. As such, engineers within the Republic have been working on prototype Dreadnought-class ships. Imagine the malevolence, but its structure being similar to our Venator-class ships. Anakin paused. However, there was another blueprint for a ship being much more different than prototype Dreadnoughts. However, the design for this ship was scrapped, as engineers declared that making such a thing would take up too much material, money, time, and space. This ship is the very same one that we are looking at right now. The ship was given the name Executor Class. Anakin paused, making sure everyone's attention for the next part. The ship is over 19,000 meters in length, over 5,000 weapon emplacements, enough firepower to liquidate an entire planet with orbital fire. Despite its sheer size, the ship is one of the fastest you would see of its class. Titanium metal being its main foundation, its shielding system being one of the best money can buy. This ship was designed for one thing, and one thing only, for war, Anakin said grimly, watching the shock on everyone's faces at the specifics of the ship. But the design for this ship was scrapped, as this ship would take way too much time to build. The amount of credits that would be spent in even building it would be immeasurable. I would say 5, maybe 10 years would be long enough to finish building that monster of a ship. Even then, the amount of credits to build it is even more insane. I'd say around the sum of 1.5 billion credits. Anakin finished. The entire room was silent, as everyone digested what they heard. Even the clones were silent, realizing just how easily that ship could have destroyed them within moments. The silence was broken by Obi-Wan. How do bounty hunters have a hold of this ship if it was never built in the first place? Anakin sighed grimly. They probably built it themselves, but where did they find the material, let alone the credits to build it? And how did they build it so fast? Mace Windu narrowed his eyes to Skywalker. When were the blueprints for this ship created? Anakin gulped. Only a few months after the Clone Wars started, Master. There were only 2 blueprints that were created of this ship. Palpatine took over. The first set of blueprints are locked away safely within my office. The other set of blueprints were lost during a space battle. The transport carrying the blueprints were thought to be destroyed. Obviously they weren't, and these bounty hunters found the blueprints. Mace Windu interjected. It still doesn't explain how they were able to build it so fast. We will have to worry about that for another time. Obi-Wan chimed. We should concentrate our focus on Gunray. He fled on a Republic ship, correct? Then that means that ship can still be tracked. Right, Master Kenobi is, Master Yoda said. Send Kit Fisto to track Gunray. We will. Needed elsewhere. Master Luminara and Padawan Tano are. Understood, Master Yoda, Luminara said in acceptance. Ahsoka bowed beside her. With sonic boom-like sound, a Jedi starfighter dropped out of hyper over a large planet that had a gray atmosphere. Jedi Master Kit Fisto hummed as he saw the gray planet. He had been tracking the signal left by the Republic ship Gunray stole. Problem was the signal always kept moving, never staying in one spot until now. His R6 unit beeps at the Jedi. I know R6. It's a strange planet indeed, but we've seen strangers, Fisto told the astromech. R6 beeps several times, before a hologram appears in front of the Jedi Master, showing the visage of Ahsoka Tano and Luminara. Master Luminara, Padawan Tano, I've tracked Gunray to a remote sector outside the Outer Rim. So has your old Padawan Nadar. He is already waiting for you on the planet's surface. Luminara spoke. It shall be great to see Nadar again after so long, Fisto said with a smile. I wish you luck in your hunt, Master Fisto, Luminera said with a small smile. Good luck, Master Fisto. And I'm sorry we lost that slime ball, Ahsoka chimed in. Kit Fisto offered the young Padawan a grin. No worries, young one. Gunray will be placed within our custody once again, he cheerfully claimed. With that said, he cut off the transmission and entered the planet's surface. Piloting the starfighter closer to where another ship was landed, the Jedi Master landed and disembarked from his ship. Keep the ship warm, R6. We might need a quick getaway, he said. R6 beeped his confirmation. Nodding his head towards his R6 unit, the Jedi Master turned and approached a group of individuals. Several clones were armed with their blasters, while a hooded figure stood in front of them. Reaching out with the Force, Fisto smiled when he felt his former apprentice's presence in the Force. Nadar, he greeted loudly, making the figure turn. Congratulations on passing the trails. It's good to see you again. Fisto warmly congratulated me. The hooded figure lowered his head, and Nadar smiled at his old mentor. It's good to see you, as well, Master. It seems we are both after the same prize, Nadar noted with a grin. Fisto chuckled good half-heartedly indeed. The captain of the clones saluted, his brothers doing the same. General Fisto, the captain greeted me. Fisto warmly smiled at the clone captain. Hello, Captain. Well, shall we begin our hunt? He said with a grin. The clones all branded their blasters, silently saying they were ready, while Nadar merely nodded his head. Nodding at the eagerness of the men, Fisto took the lead, Nadar, and the clones following after him. Stopping, Fisto hummed, as he regarded the large entrance before him. His eyes searched for any possible entry. Nadar, however, was not as patient as his former master. The younger Jedi ignited his lightsaber. Master allowed me to make an entrance, Nadar insisted. Fisto held out a hand to Patience Nadar. If you look at things much more closely, you will find that there are many possible choices, methods, and entrances, the Jedi Master wisely stated. Placing his hand on the wall, the Jedi Master pushed, and the square-shaped piece of the wall was pushed inwards. A moment later, the entire wall began moving until the entire entrance was opened. Let us go meet our host, shall we? Fisto said cheekily. The Jedi entered the lair without another word, his men following in behind them. A few minutes after they entered the lair, they heard distant murmuring behind a door a few halls down. Moving quickly and silently, they reached the door and took up position. Double the patrols. The Jedi will come for me. I know it. Once they get a whiff of my scent, they will never leave me alone, the voice of Nuke Gunray ordered. Fisto narrowed his eyes as he and his men moved towards the chair the Viceroy was sitting in, not paying attention to the Viceroy's words. Sir? One of the droid guards said questionably. The Jedi are right behind you. What? Gunray yelled out in fear. Do something. You. Blast them. The droids quickly did, as ordered, and opened fire upon the Jedi. However, they were quickly dealt with in a matter of seconds. Captain, did you kill the Jedi? Fisto raised his hand, but was interrupted by Nadar, who used the Force to spin the chair around. No, but we have you, Viceroy, Nadar said, feeling a sense of victory swell up inside him. However, Nadar's feeling of victory was destroyed, as it was only a hologram of the Viceroy. You have nothing, Jedi fools, the Viceroy said in triumph. This time you have fallen into my trap. Shortly after the Viceroy said that, both Nadar and Fisto felt the cold steel of a blaster pistol being pressed against their heads. They stiffened in shock and surprise. The startled yelps of their troopers told them that they had no idea what happened either. Fisto slowly turned his head to look into the barrel of the blaster pistol. Looking beyond the barrel, Fisto looked into merciless cold sapphire blue eyes, spiked blonde hair that fell just below his shoulders. Fisto noted how several parts of the blonde's body appeared, as a light-bending energy stopped engulfing them. It took Fisto only a moment to realize what happened. The one holding them hostage was cloaked, and that's how he managed to get the drop on them. Glancing at the clones, Fisto noted how they were held in a similar position, the captain being held hostage, as a man with spiked black hair that reached his waist held a blaster pistol to the captain's head. Fisto also noted how the blonde one that was holding him hostage had another pistol pointed into Nadar's head, as well. Hands off your lightsaber, Jedi, Naruto coldly ordered, pressing his blaster pistol harder to Nadar's head. Nadar grit his teeth, but reluctantly followed the blonde command. Nuke Gunray laughed gleefully. Today, Jedi, is the day you perish. With that said, the hologram of the Viceroy disappeared, and the room was left in a tense silence. A silence that was broken by Fisto. So you're the bounty hunters who helped Gunray escape, eh? My name is Kit Fisto. May you do me the honor of knowing yours? He asked good-naturedly. Madara chuckled in amusement. Name's Madara Uchiha. My nephew, who is the one holding a blaster to your head, is Naruto. Fisto chuckled. Pleasure to meet the both of you. He said sincerely. Nice weather this planet has, eh? Naruto snorted with a half-smile. Yeah, very peachy and homey, he said with a brief chuckle. Nadar sighed at his master. Only his master would try to make friends with the enemy in a situation like this. The clones all sweat dropped, and they idly wondered if General Fisto had a few screws loose. Before any more conversation could take place, a hologram of Count Dooku appeared seated in the chair that Nuke Gunray previously sat in. Master Fisto, I apologize for any hostility that may have been shown to you. Please know that this is not our true method of hospitality, the Count stated calmly. Really? Then I must see your true method of hospitality one day, Count. It should prove interesting, Fisto said. I apologize that Gunray could not welcome you personally, so allow me to offer you an alternative prize, Dooku stated, a dark grin appearing over his face. The prize wouldn't happen to be these bounty hunters, would it? Nadar snapped, his head jerking in Naruto's direction. Dooku shook his head. No, they are merely overseers. They will not attack unless attacked upon first. Shortly after that, Fisto felt the cold metal of the blaster pistol leave his head, and he sighed in relief. Nadara also sighed in relief, and he had to restrain himself from attacking the blonde. Madara likewise released the clone captain, and stood next to Naruto, who was standing next to the hologram of Dooku. I sincerely wish you luck, Master Fisto, you will need it, Dooku stated before his hologram disappeared. Mere seconds after that, Naruto pushed a few buttons on his gauntlet, and the several small compartments on his boots opened up. Small sparks ignited under the blonde's boots before they sprang to life. Naruto began floating up in the air, as the thrusters in his boots lifted him upwards. Madara followed shortly after, giving the Jedi a grin, as he floated upwards. Good luck, Jedi. Believe me, you'll need it. Madara started with a bloodthirsty smile. He and Naruto shared a glance before they both flew into the shadows of the room, the sound of doors hissing open as they flew down the halls. Fisto watched the spot they were standing in for a moment, before he gestured for Nadar and the clones to follow him. They continued to inspect the inner halls of the lair, before they stumbled upon rooms that held statues of what seemed to be ancient warriors. The final room they entered that was down the hall showed them just whose lair this truly was. Fisto, Nadar, and the clones could only stare at the dozens of armors that were lined up in front of them, each one of them bearing the visage of. This is the lair of General Grievous, Fisto shouted in realization. These must be trophies of all the Jedi he's murdered, Nadar murmured, examining a lightsaber hilt. There are so many. Indeed there is, Naruto murmured, as he spied on the two Jedi and the clones in the balcony above. His blue eyes narrowed, as he tried to listen to more of their conversation. He sighed in displeasure when he found he couldn't. His communicator blinked a few times. Naruto tapped it, then placed his wrist closer to his lips. Yes, Blanc? He murmured in a low tone. A starfighter that is similar to the design of General Grievous has just exited hyperspace. He's going to land on the planet momentarily, Blanc stoically answered. Thank you for the warning, Blanc. Keep the Susanoo in the air. I have a feeling that our presence here is entirely unnecessary, Naruto responded. Got it? Any chance we can leave Madara behind? While Blanc's voice was stoic, Naruto could still hear the hopeful tone she had. He sighed, a twinge of amusement entering his tone. No, he answered. Damn, she responded. As it stood, it turned out that their presence was not really needed on the planet after all. The only time that Naruto ever felt the need to interfere was when it seemed Grievous was going to be captured by the combined efforts of both the Jedi and clones. However, Grievous turned out to be more cunning than he imagined, and escaped. But not before killing a few clones. Other than that, it seemed Grievous had everything under control the entire time. To be quite honest, it left both Madara and Naruto bored, quite frankly. It got up to the point where Madara even fell asleep at one point. But he awoke just in time to see Grievous kill the Jedi Knight who arrogantly thought he matched Grievous' power with his own, something that made Madara snort. When they noticed Grievous give chase outside his lair, they merely shrugged, and decided to end their mission then and there. After all, the outcome was pretty clear. Either Grievous kills Fisto, or Fisto escapes. Both Naruto and Madara considered the latter to be most likely, as Fisto was a Jedi Master, and a member of the Council to boot. So they merely flew up into the Susanoo, which was cloaked several hundred meters away from Grievous' lair. The ship's airlock uncloaked, and the duo entered the ship, already heading for the bridge, as Naruto told Blanc to take the ship up to orbit. Moments later, their assumption was correct, as Fisto's starfighter flew out of the planet's orbit, and flew to the hyperspace ring. Madara, being Madara, decided to mess with the Jedi a little bit. Uncloak the ship, he started with a grin. Blanc gave him a sharp glance, but a small nod from Naruto made her do so. Seriously, the things she did for the blonde-haired Mandalorian. Kit Fisto could only look on in disbelief, as the Susanoo uncloaked right in front of his eyes. He read the reports about this ship, but those reports did not do it any type of justice at all. It was the most massive ship he ever saw in his life, and quite possibly the one he'll ever see in his lifetime. It was hard to believe that such a ship could make the Malevolence seem like a tiny ant in comparison. Truly it was a ship of monstrous size. Blinking, Fisto looked to his scanners, and noted that it said that the Susanu's weapons were heating up. Fisto panicked, as he frantically sent a transmission to the massive Executor-class vessel. Yes? Madara's voice asked from the comms. Hello friend, may I ask why your weapons are heating up, and pointing at me? Fisto asked nervously. I saw a bug on your ship so I thought I would shoot it off, Madara casually answered. And no need. There is no bug on my ship. It's just fine. Thank you for the thought though, Fisto said, trying not to sound nervous, as he laughed awkwardly. Are you sure? Madara asked in amusement. Why yes, I'm sure, Fisto answered. Well alright, if you're so sure then fine. Fisto sighed in relief, as his ship connected with the hyperspace ring. He spared one last glance at the Susanu before he gave a small smile. You aren't as bad as your reputation says, he murmured, as his ship blasted off into hyperspace. Madara watched Fisto's ship shoot off into hyperspace before he sighed. Sidious was to contact him within 2 hours or so that left him and the others quite a bit of free time. He folded his arms, as he silently thought on where to go. Where to next? Blanc asked emotionlessly. In an instant it was Naruto who had spoken. Set a course for Neptunia, the blonde ordered. Blanc blinked, and she looked at the blonde in surprise. The place they were heading towards next was her home planet? As if sensing Blanc's thoughts, Naruto turned to her, and gave her a warm smile, as he nodded. Blanc felt a smile curl up on her lips, as her dull blue eyes gained a bit of a shine. She couldn't wait to see her little sisters. She looked at Naruto once more, and blushed at the smile he was still giving her. Madara had a glazed-over expression on his face when Naruto mentioned Neptunia. Verd, I'll see you soon, he murmured, as he felt excited to see the goddess of Leanbox once again. You've heard Naruto, brat. Set a course for Neptunia, he ordered. Blanc glared at Madara. Shut up. I was going to do that before you even thought about opening your mouth, she snapped, as she typed in the coordinates in the navigation computer. Naruto sighed, as the two seemed like they were once again going to fight. Uncle, stop aggravating her, Naruto murmured aloud. Blanc sent Madara a smug look, as Madara frowned at his nephew. Why do you always pick her side? He asked in annoyance. Because you're always the one picking on her, Naruto snapped. Madara smirked mischievously. Or maybe it has to do with the fact that you want to bed her, he purposely said aloud. Naruto froze, and his eyes began twitching. His face took on a tomato red color, as his eyes expressed both murderous rage and embarrassment. I am going to castrate you, Naruto exploded out in rage, as his wrist blades extended. Without a word, Naruto leapt towards his uncle, who merely laughed gleefully, as he dodged the blonde's attacks, all while Blanc merely stared at her computer screen, a furious blush on her face, as she thought about Madara's words. She shyly poked her fingers together in a cute manner, and she glanced at Naruto, as he chased Madara in rage. If it's Naruto I don't mind, she murmured quietly, as her blush got deeper. Not believing the words that slipped out of her mouth, she brought her hat over her face to hide her blush and face. Madara's amused laughter, as dozens of crashes were the only thing that was heard, as the Susanoo blasted off into hyperspace. Dooku's lightsaber, that is, Master Yoda stated in light surprise at seeing his former Padawan's lightsaber, his green eyes taking the unique design of the hologram version of the red blade. This scum having possession of Dooku's lightsaber means nothing, Palpatine stated, glaring lightly at Hondo, leader of the pirates who claimed to have captured Count Dooku. In the back of his mind he was darkly wondering how Dooku had been captured. Perhaps Dooku needed more training. If you are not willing to meet my price, perhaps the Separatists will, Hondo responded, taking the Chancellor's insult with no offense. Senator Pada Midala of Naboo moved to the Chancellor's side. We may never have another opportunity to capture Dooku, she told him softly, before she turned her attention to Hondo. We would like to send 2 Jedi, to verify that you do, indeed, have Dooku in your custody. Send your Jedi, Hanzo began, turning off the lightsaber. But they must be unarmed, he demanded. Impossible, Padme protested. Relax, Hondo soothed. We mean your Jedi no harm. They shall be safe. I'll treat them as if they were from my own family, he promised. Send General Kenobi and Skywalker, we shall. Most eager to continue their pursuit of Dooku, they are. Yoda spoke. Agreed. Mace Windu spoke, nodding at the Grand Master's decision. Palpatine's eyes darkened as he glared out the window, idly noting how the conversation was finished, and everyone slowly left, bidding their farewells. He frowned darkly as he breathed in. It seemed he would have to arrange for the Count's early release. Luckily, he knew just the ones to call. He panted in fear as he leaned against the wall, his green eyes frantically searching for any sign of his pursuer. He wanted to live. He didn't want to die. Sure, he was a thief, and he did some bad things in his life. Most of them bad, some good, but that didn't mean he had to die. The sound of cans cluttering in the alley made him jump in fear, as his heart pumped rapidly. He sighed in relief, as he saw it was only a small womp rat. Confound it! Those things are scary when you are trying to hide from someone or something. He looked up at the moon, as he hid in a small village that was abandoned. As were most settlements that were on Tatooine, there were only small farms, Jabba's palace, and Mos Eisley that were inhabited in the desert planet. Sure, there were dozens of small villages, but they were abandoned due to the incredibly scorching hot heat and the sand people who ransacked the villages. How surprising that an abandoned village would be the thing that would quite possibly save him. His breath hitched as he heard footsteps getting near his position. With a small burst of courage, the man slowly peeked out from behind the small alley he hid behind. He spotted his pursuer within moments. That spiked blonde hair and the dark orange Mandalorian armor told him all he needed to know. He leaned back against the wall and slowly dropped to his knees. He clenched his fist, as small tears leaked from his eyes. Why did he have to be so stupid? Why did he have to go and piss off Jabba the Hutt the way he did? What could have possessed him to steal from a Hutt, and from Jabba no less? He was going to die. There was no way around it. He was going to die, here, on this pitiful planet, without ever accomplishing anything in his life. In his moments of despair and hopelessness, he finally noted that he could not hear the sounds of footsteps any longer. He peeked out again, and he let out a relieved sob, as he saw that the blonde-haired Mandalorian was gone. Maybe, just maybe the gods were smiling down upon him. Maybe that Mandalorian had just given up on searching for him, and went home. With closed eyes, the man released a shaky sigh, as he sobbed in relief. Regaining his composure, the man stood, and stepped out of the alley. With his eyes still closed, the man did not realize the armored body in front of him. As a result, he fell to the ground when he bumped into it. He shook his head, as he looked up in confusion, only for them to widen in fear and despair when he saw the armored figure of his pursuer. Cold sapphire blue eyes staring him in the eyes, expressing no remorse or mercy, as the blonde leveled a blaster pistol to the man's head. Instantly, the man got on his knees and begged for his life. "Please, Naruto," the thief began, already knowing the blonde's name, as it was well known in the galaxy, especially on Tatooine. "Please don't kill me. All I've ever done in life was steal. Please, don't kill me. Please, please, please. I have a wife and a kid. I only stole so I could make their lives easier," the thief sobbed. "Please, look inside your heart. I'll disappear. You will never hear from me again. I'll go off-world. Jabba won't even know I even left the planet. Please, spare me." Naruto continued glaring at the man, not an ounce of mercy being shown in his eyes, his lips in a tight scowl, as he glared at the sobbing man. He knew who this man was, Jojo Kuler, a small-time thief that stole from nobility, and sometimes crime bosses. This time he decided to steal from a Hutt, Jabba to be more precise. The story about his wife and kid? It was true. Thing was that his wife and child lived on Coruscant. His wife had a steady job as a doctor at one of the best hospitals on Coruscant, while his kid had just gotten a job as a petty officer on the Coruscant police force. Another fact, his wife was remarried. "Sorry, Kuler, but while your lies might work on any other man, it won't on me," Naruto coldly stated. Jojo's breath itched, as he realized the lie he always used didn't work. "Then take me alive. I'm probably worth more alive, aren't I?" he asked in fear. "Your head is worth a lot of credits dead, so I'll be taking your head back to Jabba now." The blonde Mandalorian started with hell-freezing coldness. Wait! Jojo was cut off, as the sound of blaster fire cut through the air. Jojo's corpse fell to the ground, a small hole in his head, as steam sizzled off the newly made hole. His eyes were blank and lifeless. Blood dripped down the small hole and onto the sand. Naruto stared at the corpse of Jojo Kuler, and he scoffed slightly. He holstered his pistol, and his right wrist blade extended. Kneeling down, the blonde stabbed his blade into Jojo's neck and severed the head from the body, cutting off the spinal cord, and holding the head by the hair. Naruto stood and slowly placed the head on his belt. Holding it there, the blonde pulled out a string and placed it inside the open mouth of Jojo's head. With that done, the blonde carefully wrapped the string around his waist, uncaring of the blood dripping onto his armor and robes. Once he was done, the blonde glanced at Jojo's headless corpse, noting how a few womp rats began nibbling on it. Scoffing, Naruto activated his boot thrusters and flew into the direction of Jabba's palace. He had a bounty to collect. On the bridge of the Susanoo, above the orbit of Tatooine, dozens of assassin droids worked dutifully and restlessly, not once stopping in their work, as they manned the various controls. Their lifeless husks showed nothing but what their programming ordered them to do. Madara sighed boredly, as he threw the deactivated lightsaber in the air. He caught it as it descended, only for him to throw it up in the air a second later. He repeated this process multiple times, his boredom increasing every second. Oh, how he hated boredom, but there was nothing he could do about it. Sure, he could train in the training room, but all the training programs quickly got boring after a while. He deserved this, he supposed. After all, he was the one to suggest going to Tatooine, and to see if Jabba had a job for them. He would have gone himself to Jabba's palace, except for the fact that he absolutely hated sand. The stuff just got everywhere, and he hated it a lot. Thus he forced Naruto to go out into the desert that was Tatooine to get a job for Jabba, if the Hutt had any. Something that Blanc was vividly against, as she tried to get Naruto to stay on the ship with her, and for Madara to go out instead. Although Naruto convinced her to let him venture out, as he needed the exercise anyway, Blanc had reluctantly agreed, and allowed Naruto to leave the ship. Since then they had been on the bridge, Blanc reading a book to pass time while he juggled his lightsaber. They would have landed the Susanoo on the planet, but Madara did not want to. There was no way he was letting the Jawas put their hands on his precious ship. Even while cloaked, the Jawas always somehow know that it's there. Madara learned from his mistakes from the first time he left a cloaked device unsupervised with a Jawa nearby. It cost him 15,000 credits to get that miniature cloaking device back. Madara sighed again in boredom, as he continued juggling his lightsaber. He glanced at Blanc, only to notice her glaring at him. Raising an eyebrow, he held her stare for a few moments. "What?" he asked. Blanc continued glaring at him through her dull blue eyes before she spoke. Her voice is soft and emotionless. "When are you returning that lightsaber back to Naruto?" she asked, a hint of anger in her tone. Madara raised an eyebrow. "When Naruto gave this to me," he responded, holding up the lightsaber. Blanc narrowed her eyes slightly. "Naruto loaned that to you." "True," Madara conceded, "but he never asked for it back, so I assumed he didn't want it anymore," he said. It was true. Originally this lightsaber that he wielded belonged to Naruto. It was a lightsaber the blonde created from scavenging ruins of both Jedi and Sith temples on the various planets that used to hold Jedi and Sith presence back in the days of the Old Republic. The lightsaber was made from the various parts he found lying around the temples, and the rare silver crystal that he used to give the lightsaber its luster. However, Naruto barely used it at all, only using it when he truly needed to, or when he was training in its use. When Madara expressed an interest in wielding a lightsaber, Naruto had merely given Madara his. Naturally, Madara assumed that the blonde was letting him borrow it. When the blonde never asked for it back, Madara assumed he didn't want it back. Blanc frowned. "Naruto is waiting for you to either make one yourself, or for you to give it back to him without him asking," she stated. "How would you know?" Madara asked with a raised eyebrow. Blanc glared at him. "I know Naruto better than you," she stated confidently. Madara smirked. "How a brat such as you can be so close to my nephew still surprises me," he said. Blanc's eye twitched, as she caught the hidden insult in his tone. "Give Naruto his lightsaber back," she stated, trying her best to rein in her anger. "What are you going to do?" Madara responded, his smirk growing wider. "Scratch your nails on that chalkboard you call a chest?" he said with condescension. The twitch in Blanc's eyes grew, as he gritted her teeth. Her dull blue eyes ignited in pure rage, as she glared angrily at Madara. Sure, she wasn't as developed as other girls, but petite girls like her had a certain beauty that not many could comprehend. Although that still didn't stop her from wanting a chest that was a bit more developed. Not the cow type that Vert seemed to enjoy having, but more of the type that Neptune had. Although Naruto had once stated that she was perfect the way she was. Thinking about that made Blanc's cheeks redden slightly, but she quickly regained her composure, and she continued boring a hole into Madara's head. "It's easy to make your own lightsaber. The materials are just difficult to find," Blanc stated. Madara huffed softly. "I know that," he began, and he stopped juggling the lightsaber, and ignited it. The unstable aura of the silver blade of light gives it an intense and intimidating appearance. Just to find the perfect crystal to give it its color is pretty damn difficult. There is only one planet that has lightsaber crystals, and that planet is a little bit too close to Republic space for my liking, he stated. Blanc scoffed softly. "Did you forget who I am? If you so desire it, and if your faith in my power is strong enough, I can conjure a crystal for you," she stated, a hint of smugness in her monotone. Madara blinked. "Huh, I kind of forgot you were a goddess for a second," he idly commented. "Well, what are you waiting for? Make me a damn crystal already," he demanded. Blanc scoffed, as she looked away, irritation and distaste in her eyes, as she resumed reading her book. Nobody demanded things from her. The second Madara learned to respect someone of her status and power, she would grant him his desire for a crystal. "Hey, did you hear me?" Madara snapped, his eyes twitching. Blanc's response was for her to turn a page. Madara gritted his teeth, as he glared at the little petite goddess. "Fine then, I guess you don't really want this to be returned to Naruto. I guess I'll keep it," Madara stated, grinning slightly, as he used her soft spot for Naruto against her. Blanc grit her teeth, her grip increasing on her book. The poor book strained under her forceful grip, glaring at Madara with angered and irritated eyes. Blanc snapped her fingers, and a blue crystal appeared floating in front of her in a flash of light. The blue crystal floated next to Madara, and the black-haired Mandalorian took it with a raised eyebrow. Blue? He asked questionably. To be honest, he would have preferred either red or purple. Blanc glared at him, well aware of his thought process. The reason why she didn't give him a red crystal was simple. That required the dark side energy of the Force. She did not even so much as touch the so-called Force, not to mention she would never taint her godly powers with that method. The reason why she didn't give him purple? It was out of spite. The lightsaber. Blanc softly murmured in her usual monotone. Madara glanced at her before he shrugged helplessly. A deal's a deal. Casually, the crimson-armored Mandalorian tossed the lightsaber in the air, where it stopped, and hovered. Within a moment the deactivated lightsaber flew into the awaiting hands of Blanc. The sandy brown-haired girl gently took hold of the hilt. Her eyes softened, and she smiled slightly, as she looked upon the shining hilt. Despite that bastard holding onto it for so long, Naruto's presence still remained strong in it. She thought briefly. It was no surprise considering that Naruto poured his heart into creating the weapon when he worked on it. Smiling a bit wider, she held the lightsaber closer. As always, his presence is so strong and warm. Shutting her eyes, she allowed herself to bask in the small lingering presence of her favorite blonde. Of course it was nothing like the real thing, but she could accept this small piece of him until he returned from his mission. Madara quietly observed Blanc for several moments, humming slowly, as he saw her actions. She is definitely attached to my little nephew. Thing is, just how strong is her attachment to him? Seeing her small smile, Madara smirked slightly. He thought back to his nephew, and most of his interactions with Blanc. Considering Naruto's interactions with her, he is definitely attached to Blanc, as well. I wonder how this attachment will develop? Only time will time, the black-haired Mandalorian mused. Madara heard the door hiss open, and he turned, smirking in greeting, as he saw his nephew enter the bridge. Yo Naruto, had fun? He asked with a grin. Blanc turned her dull blue eyes towards the blonde, her eyes shining, gaining a shine, as she smiled softly. Naruto sighed, as walked forward, stopping next to his uncle. The target was a relatively easy kill. The only noteworthy problem was how quick and evasive the bastard was. Nonetheless, the job has been completed, and, as promised, Jabba has paid 20,000 credits for his death, Naruto responded. Madara raised an eyebrow. Where's the money? Naruto glared at him half-heartedly. I've already placed it in the vault. Remember that I'm the one who manages the money around here, he said, a little annoyed at the question. I still don't see why you don't trust me with money, Madara complained lightly. Both Blanc and Naruto gave her deadpan looks. The last time I trusted you with money you bought a Gundam as a pet. Not only that, but you named that very same Gundam Fluffy. Who names the Gundam Fluffy? Naruto replied, thinking back on Madara's pet. Don't insult Fluffy, Madara shot back, pointing a finger at the blonde comically. He's the best pet anyone in the galaxy can hope for. He tried to bite my head off last time, Naruto responded. That's because he doesn't like you, Madara blandly stated. Naruto snorted, as he turned his gaze out the window, sighing, as he gazed into the endless void that was space. Naruto, a soft voice murmured beside him. Blinking, Naruto turned his head, and looked down upon Blanc's petite frame, her blue eyes gazing up into his, as she had to tilt her head to stare up to him. Smiling softly, Naruto spoke. Yes, Blanc? Raising her hand, Blanc opened it, and the lightsaber she held in her hands hovered in front of the blonde. Naruto blinked, as he looked at the deactivated weapon. He gently took a hold of it, and let it sit in his hand. Suddenly, Naruto felt as if a small part of him was returned after being away for so long. Smiling, the blonde clipped onto his belt. Thank you, Blanc, he said with soft eyes. Blanc turned her head so that the blonde would not see her red-tinted cheeks. You're welcome, she murmured quietly in a monotone, her tone having the tiniest hint of joy. Or what about me? I'm returning the damn thing to you, Madara said, annoyed at being forgotten. Naruto gave him a deadpan stare. I have a feeling that if it wasn't for Blanc you would have never returned my lightsaber to begin, he bluntly stated, making his uncle pout slightly. Blanc gave Madara a smug glance before she turned her attention to her book, although she paid it no attention, as she kept her eyes focused on her favorite blonde. Naruto unclipped his lightsaber from his belt, and he examined it. Humming slightly, the blonde ignited the lightsaber, frowning at how unstable the blade was. Shaking his head, the blonde deactivated the weapon, and opened it. Narrowing his eyes, he fiddled with the insides for a moment before he nodded acceptance. Closing the opening he made, he ignited the blade again. This time it was more stable, with aura surrounding it, and the hilt no longer felt like it was going to burn through his hand. Smiling in satisfaction, the blonde deactivated it, and clipped to his belt again. He glanced at his uncle, as he noted the black-haired Mandalorian heading towards the hollow room, probably going to go look for something to entertain himself with. He glanced towards Blanc, noting how her eyes immediately stopped looking at him, and instead gazed upon her book. Smiling slightly, the blonde moved beside the seated goddess, and rested his head on her shoulders. Her head turned towards him, her dull blue eyes shining with emotions he was familiar with. Her cheeks heated up, as she turned back to her book, trying, and successfully regaining her composure. "Is this one of the newest books that was just recently released?" Naruto asked curiously. Blanc shook her head, her sand-brown hair swaying near Naruto's nose, unknowingly letting the blonde smell her scent. "No, this is the first book you bought when we began traveling the galaxy," she spoke softly. "Oh, which is it? Is it the one with the Trodarian who became the best treasure hunter in the galaxy?" Naruto asked. "It's the one where the Togruta goddess found and traveled with humans, who she later loved, and gave that same human immortality, so they could spend eternity together," Blanc corrected softly, her dull blue eyes shining beautifully, as she stared at one of her favorite books. Naruto softly chuckled. "You know, I heard the second installment would be released soon," he commented. Blanc turned her head towards him, her dull eyes shining in excitement. "Really?" she asked in her usual monotone, but the hidden tone of excitement was obvious to the blonde. Her lips formed a small smile. Naruto nodded his head, raise his head slightly, as he still had it resting on her shoulder. "Yes. The day it comes out, I'll head towards the bookstore too, but it for you." "Thank you," the sand-brown-haired goddess murmured. "No problem," Naruto softly responded, eyes smiling, as he stared into Blanc's eyes. Blanc's cheeks gained a red hue, as she noted how close their faces were. It was only that she realized that she could feel his breath on her skin, and she suppressed a shudder. She continued staring at the blonde's eyes, shyly pursuing her lips. Seeing his whiskers up close made her want to rub her hand on them, but she suppressed the urge. "Can you read it to me please?" Naruto asked with a half-lidded expression, a small smile on his lips. Blanc blinked before she nodded. Clearing her throat softly, she began reading. Harjen looked at the Togruta goddess with disbelief, his ears not believing what he had heard. "Soren, what did you just say?" the human said with shock in his tone. Soren only looked at him with the same loving smile she had always given him. "I am offering you to stay with me for eternity, my love. I wish to make you immortal, so that we may never be apart," she said lovingly, hopefully. Blanc read aloud in her soft tone. As Blanc read, Naruto's smile remained on his face, as he continued leaning his head on Blanc's shoulder. Soon, a small force formed on Blanc's lips as she continued reading, her eyes glancing every now and then at Naruto, watching as he closed his eyes. He wasn't sleeping, she could tell that much. The blonde was just enjoying her voice as she read, and she blushed shyly at the action. Still, she continued reading, enjoying reading the book aloud to her favorite blonde. It wasn't long before she noticed Naruto seeming to ignore everything around him as he listened to her voice. As she continued reading, Blanc slowly raised her hand, hesitating slightly, as she stopped reading for a moment. She continued, however, when she noticed the blonde stir, only for him to relax when she began reading again. Feeling more confident, her hand slowly drew closer, as she wanted to caress the blonde's face and hair. However, a beeping noise interrupted her. Blanc stopped, and slowly turned her attention on her console that was informing her of a transmission they were receiving. Naruto let out a HN, as he lifted his head from Blanc's shoulders. "Patch it through the hologram, Blanc. I'll tell my uncle about a possible client." He stared blankly, a pang of disappointment entering his tone, as he wanted to listen to Blanc read more. Blanc was glaring bloody murder at her console, her dull blue eyes glowing with the flames of hell, as she wished for her console to burst into flames. Whoever was contacting better had something important to tell, otherwise she was going to take a page from Plush's book. Meanwhile on Coruscant, Sidious shuddered, as he felt a shiver run down his spine. He dismissed as nothing, however. He was a Sith, he feared nothing, although something warned him to stay away from petite sandy brown-haired girls. Back on the Susanoo, Blanc grumbled, as she wired the transmission to the hologram. Sighing, she stood, and made her way to the hologram, not wanting to miss the job their client was going to no doubt offer. The door opened with a hiss, as she made her way into the hologram, Madara, and Naruto waiting patiently for her. She grumbled under her breath, as she stood next to Naruto, irritation in her eyes, as her dull eyes glared at the hologram projector. Moments after she stood next to the blonde, Madara pushed a button on the console. Blanc regained her composure quickly once the hologram of Sidious appeared. His hooded visage seemed to hold grim amusement. "Darth Sidious, Madara greeted me saying that you have a job for us, as I doubt this is a social call." The black-haired Mandalorian started with a slight smirk. Sidious gazed upon Madara with sickly yellow eyes that revealed only dark amusement and slight anger. "I do, in fact, have a job for you. My apprentice, Darth Tyrannus, has been captured by weakway pirates on the planet Florum. Your objective is to rescue my apprentice and get him to any separatist ship or outpost. You will be paid 200,000 for your services." "Tyrannies?" Madara murmured, knowing he heard the name before. It's the Sith who tried to convince you to be the blood donor for the creation of clones. When he refused, that's when he approached Django, uncle, Naruto explained. Madara snapped his fingers. Ah, now I remember. So you have some history with my apprentice. Sidious mused. Regardless, you have your mission, you know your payment, and you know Tyrannus's location. I'll wait for the success of your mission. With that said, Sidious cut off the transmission, leaving the harem silent. A silence that was broken by Madara's amused snort, as he turned to his gaze towards his nephew, and the petite goddess next to him. Well, looks like I'm gonna be meeting with my good old friend Tyrannis. This is going to be very interesting. Set a course for Florum. I'll be in my quarters constructing my own little lightsaber, Madara said. The black-haired Mandalorian turned, and he pulled out the blue crystal Blanc had created for him. Humming, as he walked down the hall, he began wondering if his lightsaber will be finished by the time they reached Florum. He frowned slightly, as he gazed upon the blue-colored gem. Blue was really not his thing, but it would have to do until he could get his hands on a more suitable crystal. Naruto gave Blanc a nod, as she punched into the coordinates on the Navi computer. Naruto himself fired up the ship's engines, and he gestured for an assassin droid to activate the hyperdrive. With a loud boom, the Susanoo blasted off into hyperspace, leaving behind the desert planet of Tatooine. You know, Count, being in such bindings actually suit you. You're going to be spending a lot of your time in a cell just like this one once the Republic gains custody of you, Anakin Skywalker said slyly, grinning cheekily at the elderly Sith. I seem to remember that not too long ago you were in the same situation aboard my ship, Skywalker. Dooku returned calmly, the smallest amount of condescension in his tone. Yeah, well now I'm not and you are, Anakin returned. Your former Padawan never ceases to amaze me with his remarks, Master Kenobi. The elderly Sith said the Jedi Master. Obi-Wan released a small hum, as he and Anakin circled the Count. Yes, well you can be sure that the Republic will be getting their hands on you very soon, once these Weequay pirates receive their ransom, the Jedi Master stated. Dooku snorted softly. I am positive a situation shall present itself for my escape. It's only a matter of time, and unlike young Skywalker, I can be very patient, the Sith Lord calmly stated. There will be no escape for you this time, Dooku, Anakin started with a scowl, Obi-Wan nodding beside the Jedi Knight. If I were you, Master Kenobi, I would keep my eyes out for these pirates, for they are far more devious than you can possibly imagine, Dooku warned. Devious enough to fool a Sith it seems, but we have no quarrel with them. All they want is the ransom we'll be giving them in exchange for you. Once that's done, there will be no reason that these pirates and the Republic can't be on friendly terms, Obi-Wan responded. It's time to go to Anakin. With that said, Obi-Wan turned and left the cell. Anakin followed suit, but not before leaving a few parting words for the Sith. See ya, Dooku, wouldn't wanna be ya, he said with a smirk. Your trusting nature and your naive ideals will be your undoing, Skywalker, Master Kenobi, Dooku told them gravely. Obi-Wan stopped for a brief moment, but resumed walking forward. Anakin followed, the cell door closing behind them. The two Jedi nodded to the pirates guarding the holding cells as they moved down the hall. You think Dooku was right about these pirates? Anakin murmured, keeping his voice low. Sith are masters of deception, Anakin, but even I admit that being cautious around these pirates would be in our best interests, Obi-Wan stated, his voice just as low as Anakin's. Remember, these pirates could capture Dooku while we couldn't. It speaks volumes of just how devious these pirates can be. It's best that we keep our distance from them. I don't want to trust them, only to be betrayed, the brown-haired Jedi Master stated. Agreed. Although there is no reason why we shouldn't be at least friendly to them, Anakin asked. We can be friendly, just not too friendly, Obi-Wan murmured. The two paused their trek to their ship, as the door leading outside opened. Several pirates walked into the hall. As they moved outside, the pirates rudely bumping their shoulders and chuckling. Anakin glared but remained docile while Obi-Wan was content with brushing off his shoulder. I heard rumors of how pirates captured high-value targets in the war, only to sell them off as ransom to either the opposing side or to the slave market. Anakin started with a scowl as they entered their ship. Another reason not to trust them too much, Obi-Wan stated. The duo entered the Bridge of the Twilight, Anakin's personal and favored ship. They quickly sat in the pilot and co-pilot seats respectively, and activated communications, sending a transmission directly to Coruscant. Within moments, holograms of Chancellor Palpatine, Mace Windu, Senator Amidala, and Master Yoda appeared. Ah, Anakin, Master Kenobi, I trust that these pirates are in possession of Count Dooku, Palpatine said, getting down to business. Yeah, you bet they do, and the Count is really cranky about it, Anakin answered with an almost sly smile. That's good, that means we can send the ransom, as planned, Padme stated, relief heard in her tone. With Dooku captured, and soon to be in our custody, we will be one step closer to ending this war, she said with relief. This is too easy. Keep a vigilant eye, Master Kenobi, and Skywalker must, Yoda chimed in. The ransom will be sent. All that's left is to decide who will go along to ensure negotiations run smoothly, Windu stated. Representative Binks along with the senator shall be dispatched immediately. Anakin, Master Kenobi ensures that Dooku does not escape, Palpatine stated. Don't worry, Dooku's not going anywhere. Anakin started with a small smirk. With that said, the transmission was cut off, as both Anakin and Obi-Wan stood. I know we're not supposed to trust these pirates, but not hanging out with them is gonna seem suspicious. Wouldn't you agree? Anakin said with a smirk. Obi-Wan sighed. Fine then, let's make some friends, shall we? Hours later, the two sat at the bar, dozens of pirates drinking around them, most partying, some getting in a fist fight, some flirting with the females serving them drinks, laughter, and music heard all around. All in all, just a normal day in a bar. Are you enjoying yourself, my new Jedi friends? Hondo asked them cheerfully, swinging his arms around the two Jedi. Yes, we're enjoying our time here, aren't we, Anakin? Obi-Wan with a wry smile. Yeah, peachy. The younger Jedi started with a dry smile. Perhaps a drink shall make you enjoy ourselves a bit more? Hondo asked lightly, smiling slyly at the two Jedi. Well, alright, but nothing too strong. He's flying, Obi-Wan said. Bring our new friends some refreshments, Hondo ordered loudly. A few stalls away, a pirate dispersed some drugs into the 2 cups of drinks on his serving platter. Quickly, he brought them over to Hondo, the pirate leader grabbing them, and handing them to the Jedi. Please enjoy yourselves, he said with a sly smirk. To our new Republic friends, Hondo roared, his fellow pirates bellowing their agreement. To new friends, and powerful allies of the Republic, Obi-Wan yelled with a raised cup. The pirates cheered at his words with a few patting his back. What's mine is yours, and what's yours is mine, Hondo said before he went off to get a drink of his own. Quickly, both Anakin and Obi-Wan used the Force to switch out their drinks before 2 other pirates could drink theirs. The 2 shrugged before they butted cups and raised their drinks to their lips. However, before they could drink, the power suddenly went off. Anakin and Obi-Wan looked at each other with confusion, as the pirates all murmured among themselves. All of them were wondering what was happening. What happened to the power? Hondo's voice roared out among the commotion. Before anyone could answer him, however, rumbling shook the entire building, and even more rumbling rattled the building to its foundation. In his cell, Dooku smirked, as he stood, free from his confines, using the Force to manipulate a pirate into opening his cell. Hondo, Anakin, and Obi-Wan, along with dozens of other pirates, made their way outside. When they did, it seemed as if they suddenly entered a war zone, blaster fire shooting from the skies, as Mandalorian fighters piloted assassin droids rained fire upon the pirate stronghold. Dropships landed, and deployed dozens of assassin droids, their crimson and orange gazes ominously, as they mercilessly fired upon the pirates. The dropships and fighters were all emerging from a ship that was over 19,000 meters long. Its sheer size was large enough to block out the entire sky due to how close it was, its cannons raining down upon the stronghold. Hondo and his pirates could only look on with shocked eyes as they laid their gazes upon the massive warship. It's Susana, Anakin shouted, as he used the Force to grab the lightsaber that was clipped on Hondo's belt, while Obi-Wan grabbed his lightsaber that he had hidden on his person before arriving. The 2 Jedi quickly deflected several blaster bolts that would have killed Hondo and his men had they not reacted. Hondo, Obi-Wan yelled, snapping Hondo out of his shock state. Tell your men to prepare for battle. Get them armed, get them in their ships. Anything, he shouted, as he deflected more blaster fire, Anakin using the Force to throw a rocket off trajectory. The rocket instead hit a fighter, and the fighter crashed into the roof of the stronghold. Hondo nodded, turning to his men. Men, what are you all stand around like idiots for? Get to your battle stations. Get yourselves armed. Get in those fighters of ours. Let us show our attackers how we pirates fight war, he roared. The pirates all roared in agreement, as they all armed themselves, dozens of their saucer-like ships flying off, and engaging the fighters attacking them in a furious aerial battle. Within moments the pirates on the ground clashed forces with the assassin droids. Hondo himself was armed with 2 blaster pistols, viciously firing into assassins' droids like no tomorrow. He dodged several bolts of blaster fire, and he fired several rounds into the chest of 3 assassins' droids. 2 of the droids fell, but the third remained standing, as it leaped towards Hondo. The droid unsheathed its vibro blades, and engaged Hondo. However, Hondo proved to have some skill in close combat, as he dodged several strikes from the droid. He ducked under a strike, and he kicked under the feet of the droid. The droid flipped in midair with its arm held out. It seemed like a whirlwind of destruction of its blade was close to lobbing off Hondo's head. Hondo jumped back, and the assassin droid stopped spinning. It leaped after the pirates just in time to prevent Hondo from firing rounds into it. Hondo used his blaster pistol to stop the vibro blades, but he strained under the droid's metallic strength. Hondo fell back, and used his feet to throw the droid over him. Quickly, Before the droid could leave his vision, Hondo fired off 4 shots into the droid's body. The droid landed on the ground, where it twitched for several moments before it ceased. "Impressive skills, Hondo," Obi-Wan remarked, as he skillfully bisected 4 assassin droids in half. "Obi-Wan, duck!" Anakin's voice sounded off. Without a second thought, Obi-Wan ducked, and a second later Anakin's lightsaber flew over his body, and bisected an assassin droid who was sneaking up on his flank. Using the Force, Anakin recalled his lightsaber, and it landed in his hand just in time to block the strike of an assassin droid who tried cleaving him in half with a vibro blade. Anakin pushed the droid back, and cleaved it in half with his lightsaber, tearing apart several more droids. Anakin threw his lightsaber once more, and the blue whirlwind of destruction took out close to 6 assassin droids before it flew back in his hands. Using the Force, Anakin pushed back several dozen droids into their brethren, before he lifted a vibro blade with the Force, and sent flying towards a leaping assassin droid. "Any clue as to what's happening, Jedi?" Hondo yelled the question, shooting 2 assassin droids, as he went back to back with both the Jedi, Madara, and Naruto. "They are the only ones with that confounded ship," Anakin gritted out, as he deflected several bolts of blaster fire. "I concur," Obi-Wan agreed, using his lightsaber to slice apart an assassin droid that got too close for comfort. "Why would those 2 attack us?" Hondo asked in bewilderment, as he shot more droids. "They were probably hired to rescue Dooku by the Separatists," Anakin answered. "And here I was worried about a clanker army attacking us, when Madara and his nephew are worse," Hondo responded. For several more minutes the trio fought alongside the pirates, either side losing any leeway, yet the death toll for the pirates were high, wounded being even higher. Suddenly, several assassin droids stopped firing, as they all moved to form a small area, much to the trio consisting of Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Hondo. That is until they saw a small shuttle land in the clearing. Anakin and Obi-Wan felt 3 presences aboard that shuttle, 2 of which were life forms that were normal like any other being in the galaxy, although they had a stronger presence in the Force than most. But the third one was what shocked them to the core. They had never felt such a presence. Its very presence sends a ripple through their connection through the Force. Every instinct was crying out for them to not engage the third member on the shuttle no matter what. "Hondo, go to your men. They need a leader. This is our fight," Obi-Wan said grimly. Hondo watched the shuttle, and he pursed his lips, not believing that he was actually going to drug the 2 Jedi earlier when they were right now fighting to protect him and his men, when Master Jedis, Hondo told them, before he ran off to join his men. With loud hiss, the entrance ramp to the shuttle opened. 4 assassin droids exited the ship, except these 4 were different. Instead, the heads of these 4 droids were different from other assassin droids. Their heads resembled Mandalorian helmets, and their eyes were simply a singular lined visor. Finally, 2 more figures exited the ship. Orange Mandalorian armor with battle robes consisting of the bottom half, spiked gold blonde hair that reached just below his shoulder blades, cold sapphire blue eyes, bangs that covered his forehead, with 2 long ones framing his whisker face. A lightsaber hilt held his right hand, his lips set into a tight scowl. One thing Anakin and Obi-Wan couldn't believe was that the young man seemed to be the same age as Ahsoka, give or take a year. The other one has crimson-red Mandalorian armor, along with battle robes consisting of his bottom half, spiked raven black hair that reached his waist with his bangs obscuring the right portion of his face. His single crimson-red colored eye expressed bloodlust. His lips pulled back into a small smirk, and scowled. In his hand he also held the hilt of a lightsaber. Both Anakin and Obi-Wan knew that they were facing Madara and Naruto Uchiha, 2 of the most feared bounty hunters in the galaxy. One thing they could not believe was just how young the blonde was. Anakin felt conflicted. The blonde one was the same age as Ahsoka, yet he also knew just how dangerous the young man really was. Within a moment, both Mandalorians activated the lightsabers in their grips, a bright silver being held in Naruto's hand, while a blue one with a reddish tint was held in Madara's hand. Without a word, the 2 Mandalorians charged. Anakin and Obi-Wan shared a small glance before the 2 Jedi sprang forward, meeting the 2 Mandalorians halfway. With battle cries, their lightsabers all met in a furious clash. Count Dooku scowled. As he leveled, he wandered his way down the halls. Earlier, he had found Hondo's office, and fortunately for him, his lightsaber was there sitting on the desk. It felt good to the Count, having his lightsaber back in his possession. He was still trying to figure out how his precious weapon was taken from him in the first place. He knew a battle was going on outside. The rumbling combined with sounds of blaster fire and explosions were hard to miss. It was either the Separatists had finally tracked him and launched a rescue operation, or someone had simply decided to attack the pirates' stronghold. Fortunately for him, it worked in his favor, as it kept both the pirates along with both Kenobi and Skywalker occupied. It allowed him time to borrow a ship from the pirates. Turning a corner, he was met with the sight of a group of pirates blocking his path. It seemed they were heading in the opposite direction, and that in turn made them facing his way. The pirates quickly brought up their weapons, aiming at the Sith Lord. Dooku prepared to electrify the foolish pirates with Force lightning. However, he paused when the pirates seemed to be lifted in the air. They gagged, as blood spurted from their chests outwardly, their mouths filling up with blood as they gurgled. The bodies all dropped to the ground dead, and suddenly several assassin droids, similar to the ones that exited the shuttle Naruto and Madara were on, appeared in front of the Count. Their Mandalorian helmeted heads looked at him, their crimson-lined visors narrowed. One of them stood forward, and spoke in a mechanical, deep robotic voice. "Our objective is to escort you to safety. We shall serve as your personal guards until you find a suitable ship to leave the planet." Dooku gazed upon the droids, and he could only smirk. Bodies littered the battlefield. Most belonged to the pirates of Florum, while another good percentage belonged to the army of assassin droids. Their mechanical limbs scattered around the battlefield as the battle waged on furiously. Off to the side, Anakin and Obi-Wan fought skillfully and valiantly against the onslaught of Madara and Naruto. Anakin ducked as the silver lightsaber horizontally tried to cleave his head. He struck out, his lightsaber trying to bisect his opponent. But the blonde proved to have good instincts, as he positioned his lightsaber to block it. A few feet away, Obi-Wan blocked, and nimbly dodged quick and precise strikes that would have killed him each time had he not been so focused. Anakin pushed his blonde opponent back, and struck against him, his lightsaber moving for his opponent's heart. Naruto dodged however, and bent his right arm around Anakin's. The blonde kneed Anakin in the stomach, forcing the man to drop his weapon, as he coughed in pain due to the blonde's attack. Naruto raised his lightsaber, preparing to cleave off Anakin's head. However, Obi-Wan, who had forced Madara to duck lest he lose his head due to Obi-Wan's horizontal strike, threw his lightsaber towards the blonde, his horizontal strike being a feigned attack. Naruto, sensing the danger to his life thanks to his honed instincts, jumped back. Just as the blue blade of light was inches away from taking his head, the blade flew back into Obi-Wan's awaiting hands, and the breaded Jedi blocked Madara's vertical strike just in time. A large grin set upon the black-haired Mandalorian's face as he glared at the Jedi with excitement in his eyes. Naruto dashed forward, trying to finish off Anakin, but the brown-haired Jedi Knight used the Force to recall his lightsaber. He ignited his lightsaber in time to block Naruto's attack, and the two entered a blade lock. "Now this is a fight," Madara shouted in excitement, although a brief sting of disappointment told him it wouldn't be much of a fight if he and Naruto stopped holding back. But there was a reason he and Naruto held back so much. After all, the only ones who could challenge him and his nephew when they used that were either dead or in hiding. Blanc and her fellow goddess don't count because, well, they were gods. Nothing could be more powerful than a god. Obi-Wan glared, his blue eyes staring deep within Madara's eyes. "Surrender, and perhaps the Senate shall be merciful," the Jedi Master stated, hoping the Mandalorian would surrender, despite how unlikely it was. Madara grinned. "Asking a Mandalorian to surrender is the highest insult you could ever ask. Mandalorians were born to fight. War is our lifeblood. Fighting is what we live for. Mandalorians would rather die than surrender." With a battle cry, Madara kicked Obi-Wan, sending the Jedi across the battlefield. Obi-Wan, however, righted himself just in time, and he sliced apart several assassin droids who tried flanking him. Hearing a battle cry, Obi-Wan spun and blocked Madara's lightsaber, entering a short blade lock before they parted. With gleeful laughter, Madara dashed towards the Jedi, his attacks quick, powerful, and merciless. Obi-Wan struggled against most of Madara's attacks, each strike threatening to lose hold of his lightsaber. Obi-Wan cartwheeled away from the black-haired Mandalorian, and he entered a back-to-back state with Anakin behind him. The two Jedi blocked the Mandalorian's strikes as they remained in their back-to-back position. With their thoughts shared, both Anakin and Obi-Wan jumped and spun in the air, their legs shooting out and hitting both Madara and Naruto their faces. Naruto's back smashed against the destroyed tank due to the force of the Jedi's kick, his lightsaber flying out of his grip and landing in a pile of destroyed droids. Madara merely used his jet boots to right himself, and in midair, he flew up and descended upon Obi-Wan, never losing the grin on his face. Anakin, meanwhile, jumped high in the air, and he descended upon the still stunned Naruto, who was regaining his bearings. With his instincts warning him of danger, Naruto instinctively activated his wrist blades and held them in a cross formation just in time to stop Anakin's attack. "I don't want to kill you, but I will if I have to," Anakin coldly stated, glaring into Naruto's eyes as he pressed down his lightsaber. Naruto grunted as he put more effort into stopping Anakin's blade from progressing further. Surprising. He began a Jedi who is willing to do what must be done. "However, there is something different about you. It seems to be almost Sith-like. What would happen if I killed someone you loved, I wonder?" Naruto murmured in a cold monotone. Anakin's eyes widened, and for the first time since he had fought against the blonde Anger began brimming in his eyes. This guy was comparing him to Sith. No, that's impossible. There is no way he could ever be considered even remotely related to the Sith. There was no way he was like Dooku, or Ventress. Sure, he might be just a bit different than any Jedi, but that didn't mean that he was like a Sith in any way, and the way he said he would murder one of his loved ones with no regret. It just fueled Anakin's anger even more. With anger now fueling him, Anakin broke the blade lock with the blonde, and smashed his lightsaber against Naruto's wrist blades. Anakin repeated this action many times, Naruto's wrist blades creaking and cracking underneath the strain. With one final strike, Naruto's wrist blades shattered. Naruto's eyes were widened, as his wrist blades shattered, and the blade rolled his body left and right, as Anakin tried repeatedly to stab him in the head. Finally seeing an opening, Naruto punched Anakin square in the jaw, and kicked the Jedi Knight away from him. Anakin recovered, and he used the Force to pick up a now standing Naruto. Anakin slammed Naruto on the ground repeatedly, before he threw the blonde into the destroyed tank once more. He continued slamming the blonde around several more times, before he finally slammed the blonde into the ground, near and destroyed assassin droid. Naruto groaned in pain, as he shook himself free of the stars forming in his head. It was then he was aware that there was a sharp pain forming in his right leg. He looked at his leg, seeing a metal shard embedded into it, as it stuck out the other end, blood pooling on the ground. Damn it, Naruto murmured, as he pulled out the shard with gritted teeth. He threw the shard away, and he noted his lightsaber laying a few inches away from him. He reached for it, but he was stopped, as he was lifted up in the air, and held there. Anakin advanced upon him, his hand held out showing he was holding the blonde with the Force, his blue lightsaber vibrating intensely, his eyes having an unnatural yellow tint to them. Naruto scared, as he looked at the still angered Anakin. Well, it worked. Sidious just better pay that extra like he promised, Naruto thought. Anakin stops. Obi-Wan shouted towards his former Padawan, seeing what he was planning on doing. This was not the Jedi way. Why was Anakin doing this? The Jedi Master tried to run towards the Jedi Knight, hoping to stop him before he did something he regrets. But his path was blocked when Madara attacked him, their blades locking, as Obi-Wan blocked his strike. Out of the way. Do you not care for the life of your nephew? Obi-Wan shouted to Madara in disbelief. Madara merely smirked. Worry about your own safety, Jedi. Besides, Naruto will be just fine. Before Obi-Wan could respond, he felt it. The third presence, the presence he had felt so wary of facing, moved, and was heading in Anakin's direction. Obi-Wan glanced towards Anakin's direction, with Madara joining him, the both of them having a front row seat. Naruto watched calmly, as Anakin advanced upon him, the Jedi Knight's lightsaber vibrating in an almost bloodthirsty manner. The yellow tint in Skywalker's eyes never leaves. The brown-haired general's stretched out hand began closing slowly, and Naruto felt his throat begin to constrict. Naruto held his breath, as Anakin began to force choke him, the indifference not leaving his eyes. It served to only anger Anakin further, as the blonde refused to writhe. Anakin lifted his lightsaber, and prepared to slay the Mandalorian in his anger, only for him to be blasted back, as the ground beneath him exploded. Anakin was launched back, and his concentration was broken, as he flew through the air. Naruto was freed from his Force grip, and the blonde fell to the ground with a thud, groaning in pain, as his wound was aggravated. Anakin recovered, and landed on his feet, the yellow tint leaving his eyes, as he realized with guilt that his anger had gotten the best of him. He looked up, as the smoke cleared, and the object that blasted him back was a large hammer? A hammer that consisted of colors that were blue, white, and gold. Suddenly, the air around them turned cold, so cold that Anakin swore he could see his breath in front of him. The assassin droids all stopped firing, and the fighters in the air stopped, as well. The pirates all stopped in confusion, wondering what was happening, and Hondo looked over in Anakin's direction, the other pirates following his lead. Madara pushed Obi-Wan away, and deactivated his lightsaber. Obi-Wan, who was prepared to do battle with the man, frowned in confusion. Pay attention, Jedi. You should feel honored at what you are about to see. It's not often that she ever partakes in a battle, you know. The black-haired Mandalorian started with a smirk. Obi-Wan frowned, but deactivated his lightsaber, and looked over in Anakin's direction again. Everyone on the battlefield bore witness to the sight of a petite brown-haired girl walking towards Naruto prone form. Her white clothing with brown and light blue attributes being easily spotted in the battlefield. She walked slowly, and also with purpose. Her bangs covered her eyes from view, as her lips were set in a small frown. When she reached Naruto's form, she knelt by his side. Naruto, she spoke in a low monotone, many straining their ears to hear her. Naruto rolled over, and sighed, as he shut his eyes. I'm fine, Blanc, just a flesh wound, he answered calmly, and in resignation, knowing that he couldn't stop Blanc, knowing what was going to happen. Blanc lifted her head, her dull blue eyes revealed to the world. Her eyes remained fixated on the wound on Naruto's leg. Slowly, her fists clenched, anger brimming in her expressionless eyes, as her lips formed into a dangerous scowl. She stood slowly, telepathically, and Naruto rose from the ground, surprising everyone, especially the Jedi, as they did not feel the force being used. Naruto was then placed against the destroyed tank, leaning against the charred metal, as he tried not to aggravate his wound too much. He sighed, as he felt no feeling in his leg, proving his suspicion that the nerves in his legs were severed. It was going to be a pain getting that healed. Slowly, the petite girl turned towards Anakin, the air around the battlefield turning icy cold, and everyone shivered violently, including Madara. Even Dooku, who was safely away from the battlefield and was searching for a ship, stopped and shivered. Anakin, however, had it worse, as all the coldness was aimed at him directly. Blanc looked at Anakin with intense anger and rage. Hatred showed clearly in her eyes as she gritted her teeth. She spoke, her tone emotionless, but also enraged and angered, hatred practically oozing from her voice. Anakin flinched, as he wondered what he did to earn her ire. Obi-Wan, meanwhile, had a suspicion as to why she was so enraged. Looking at Madara's smirk only proved to confirm it somewhat. Die! With that enraged and furious shout, Blanc was covered in a shining bright light. Her petite form began floating, and everyone covered their eyes, as the light threatened to blind them. When the light died down, in the sandy brown-haired girl's place stood another, but it was clear it was the same girl. Blanc's hair turned in a silvery light blue color. It kept the same shape, but it has gotten messy with very long bangs now framing her face, the bangs almost reaching her stomach. She also gained a cowlick. Her eyes turned pink-red in color, her pupils turning white with a half-circle forming underneath it. Her outfit now resembles a white bathing suit with unattached sleeves. The extra colors consist of black and light blue. She also grew 2 centimeters in her new form. Everyone, excluding Madara and Naruto, looked at her in shock and awe. No one had time to truly admire her new form, as a large battle axe materialized in her hands. The instant that axe materialized, she disappeared, and reappeared in front of the Jedi Knight, the brown-haired Jedi's eyes widening in disbelief. Die, you shitty bastard! With a shock wave that threatened to topple everyone over, her attack landed, smoke kicking up, as an explosion occurred. Naruto looked upon the large cloud of dust, and he sighed, as he turned his gaze towards his wound. Gritting his teeth, the blonde placed his hand on his wound, and closed his eyes. With everyone distracted, the blonde was free to use that. As Naruto shut his eyes, a light green aura covered his hands. When the smoke cleared, it revealed a rather large crater. Everyone's jaws hung open, as they witnessed the destruction before their very eyes, none of them believing it. Dooku, who had gotten a ship, and was safely watching from the skies, watched on in stunned silence. Blanc could be seen hovering above the crater, the scowl not leaving her delicate face, as she glared in front of her, her battle axe held in hand, as her hair flowed along with the wind, her pink-red eyes with white pupils glaring at the living human in front of her. Anakin looked on with shocked eyes, his form settled on his bottom, as he was at the edge of the newly formed crater. He had dodged just in the nick of time, and the resulting explosion sent him blasting off. Slowly, Blanc began floating towards the stunned Jedi, her expression staying angered. She stopped in front of the Jedi, her scowl growing deeper, and her grip on her weapon tightening, as she remembered Naruto's wounds. You should be in dismembered bits, you piece of shit. She started coldly. She raised her axe. Now just die, you pile of dog shit, she yelled in anger, as she brought down her axe. Reacting out of his self-preservation instincts, Anakin dodged once more, just in time, as the axe connected to the ground, creating another explosion. The backlash sent Anakin flying, and the Jedi Knight quickly righted himself, and landed on his feet. The smoke parted quickly to reveal Blanc glaring at the Jedi, hatred strong in her eyes. You're pissing me off, she seethed. You're not pissed off enough. Anakin thought Hondo, his men, Obi-Wan, and Dooku shared the exact same thought. Madara, however, merely chuckled, always finding Blanc's anger and rage to be amusing. Blanc turned to Anakin, and she once again raised her axe, a blue aura covering the silver weapon. Before she could bring down her weapon, however, a blaster bolt hit her straight in the head. Everyone held their breaths, and shock filled them when Blanc turned in the direction in which the shot came from. Not a single scratch on her. She glared coldly at a group of pirates, one of them having one of their blaster rifles raised. Well, that's not fair at all, one of the pirates murmured aloud. I don't give a fuck, Blanc yelled, as she swung her axe over in their direction. Her axe flew from her hand, and the large weapon sailed towards the pirates. Too stunned to move, the pirates were bisected, as the axe severed their bodies from the waist. Their blood gushed forth, as they slowly fell apart to the ground. The axe still sailed through the air, before it embedded itself deeply into the wall of the pirate's stronghold. Scum, Blanc murmured coldly, as her axe dematerialized and rematerialized in her hand. Slowly, the petite goddess turned her enraged eyes towards Anakin, the hatred remaining strong. As she sneered at the Jedi, she raised her axe, and she gave a cold smirk. "When I'm through with you, your ashes are gonna scream in agony," she said, as she swung her axe once again. Anakin dodged again, as it was all he could do. He used the Force to jump farther away, not wanting to get hit by the enraged girl. Obi-Wan ignited his lightsaber to assist his former pupil, but he was prevented from doing so, as Madara grabbed his shoulder. "It's useless," Madara told him. "When Blanc is enraged like this, there are only a few people who can calm her down." "Blanc?" Obi-Wan questioned warily. Madara snorted, amused. "Her name. But if I were you, I wouldn't call her by her name. She dislikes it when anyone calls her by her name. The only ones she allows that honor are those close to her. If you want to address her, I suggest you call her White Heart." Obi-Wan filed that information for later. "What did you mean when you said only a few people can calm her down?" he questioned, relaxing now that he was sure there was no hostility between him and Madara. "Exactly that," Madara answered. "When Blanc is enraged like this, you have two options. Option 1, wait until her rage boils over, and she tires of it, which is highly unlikely. Option 2, find someone who can calm her down. Only people who are close to her can manage this," he stated. "Luckily for you, one such person is on the planet," he added slyly. "Is it you?" Obi-Wan assumed hopefully. "Nope," Madara said, sounding almost peppy with his response. "I piss off Blanc on a daily basis. I live to piss her off. I am no way close to her at all. I could die right now, and she would merely spit on my grave," the black-haired Mandalorian clarified. "And it was true, Blanc would do it." "Well, if it's not you, who is it?" Obi-Wan asked, already having an idea as to who it was. In response, Madara only looked over to the spot Naruto was, finding it empty. "It seems that person already went to calm her down," he stated. Obi-Wan followed Madara's gaze, and he noted the blonde-haired Mandalorian that was placed there was gone now. His eyes scanned the battlefield, and he finally found the blonde limping slightly towards the edge of the crater. Worried, Obi-Wan looked towards Madara, finding that the black-haired Mandalorian was looking at the blonde with something akin to pride. However, Madara's expression turned emotionless and impassive. Obi-Wan wondered if he really did see pride flicker across the man's face. Nonetheless, the Jedi Master turned his attention towards the enraged form of Blanc. Anakin backed away from the enraged goddess before him, every part of him regretting doing whatever he did that angered her so much. Blanc, who saw nothing but red, continued hovering towards the Jedi, her axe raising above, as she was prepared to unleash her godly fury upon the Jedi Knight. Her red haze increased as she recalled Naruto's wounds again. She wanted to make this Jedi suffer, to smash him into tiny-ass little pieces, and for those pieces of him to cry out in agony. She wanted the Jedi Knight dead. Dead, 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 dead. With a violent sneer, Blanc prepared to destroy the Jedi with a mighty swing of her axe, but a hand gripping her arm stopped her. Enraged, the petite goddess turned her rage-induced state to the person who had dared to interfere. Her rage however quelled, and her red-hazed vision cleared. "Naruto," she murmured, her pinkish-red eyes connecting with Naruto's calm sapphire-blue eyes. "That's enough, Blanc," Naruto said. Blanc remained silent, her docile state surprising everyone, as they thought she wouldn't stop until she destroyed Anakin. Blanc stared into Naruto's eyes, her eyes softening, as she noted the care in his eyes. She still wanted to destroy Anakin, to completely destroy his being, and to hear his soul cry out in agony. She calmed herself when she felt her rage flare again. She continued staring into Naruto's eyes, his very presence quelling her rage. "Fine," she murmured, her tone blank. Naruto smiled at her, and that smile almost made her heart melt at the sight of it. Her battle axe disappeared in a flash of light, and Naruto gently held her arm for a moment before he let go. She followed the blonde, as they flew towards Madara's position, noting how the other Jedi tensed. When they landed, Blanc gave the Jedi Master a cold stare. She noticed Naruto limping slightly, and she immediately moved to his side, anger once again hitting her, as her desire to maim the Jedi reared its head. She calmed herself, however, telling herself that Naruto was much more important than expressing her anger. With that in mind, her form was covered in a white light before it faded, and she was in her normal state once more, her dull blue eyes and her sandy brown hair returning, as her long bangs turned shorter. Her outfit changed into her usual clothing. Immediately after reverting back, the petite goddess stayed close to Naruto's side, a worried expression on her face, as she stayed close to the blonde. Naruto was slightly embarrassed, as she silently fretted over him. The thing that was worse was that she would fret over him more when they got aboard the Susanoo. It's happened before. The sound of a lightsaber being ignited was heard, and everyone turned to see Madara holding his lightsaber to Obi-Wan's neck. Before Hondo and his men could even think about lifting their weapons, the assassin droids sprang into action, their weapons pinning the pirates where they stood. Several assassin droids quickly seized Anakin, and relieved him of his lightsaber. Without further ado, Hondo, Obi-Wan, and Anakin were all forced to stand before Madara. The black-haired Mandalorian smirked at them as they were lined up. Naruto and Blanc silently stood behind Madara, Naruto with a blank expression on his face, while Blanc glared at the Jedi coldly, her teeth silently gritted. "Well, isn't this peachy?" Hondo remarked, not being able to hold his tongue. Madara smirked. "Don't worry, I have no quarrel with you pirates, nor do I have any against you Jedi. As such, you will all remain prisoners until our objective has been completed," he stated. "And just what is your objective?" Anakin was prevented from saying any more when the sound of a ship flying off into the atmosphere was heard. Everyone looked up, and bore witness to the sight of one of the pirates' ships leaving the planet. They all stared at it, as it became nothing but a speck in the sky. "Well, now we know our mission is complete," Naruto deadpanned before he turned around, and began limping towards the shuttle they arrived on. Blanc was by his side in an instant, her arms encircling his, as she helped on board. Madara watched them go, before he turned his head towards his prisoners. "Meh, no point in keeping you three, considering our objective has already been completed." With that said, Madara deactivated his lightsaber. "Wait, you're not gonna turn us over to the Separatists?" Anakin asked in disbelief. "Nope, there would be no point, seeing as they didn't hire us to do that," Madara answered in a deadpan. "Later Jedi," he said with a wave. "All assassin droids pack it up. We're leaving," he shouted, as he made his way towards his shuttle. Anakin subtly used the Force to summon his lightsaber, but he was stopped when Obi-Wan placed a hand on his shoulder. "Master?" he asked questionably. Obi-Wan shook his head. "No, Anakin. Do you really believe we can win after what we just witnessed?" he stated more than asked. Anakin remained silent, silently admitting that neither of them wouldn't stand a chance against the girl who was capable of transforming. Even then, something told him that both Madara and Naruto were holding back. How much, however, was questionable. He stared, as the shuttle lifted off the ground, and flew off into the massive form of the Susanoo. The other assassin droids either fly on built-in jet feet, or board dropships that land to pick them up. The fighters all flew up to the ship, as well. "Great, just great. I have no count to trade, my base is all but destroyed, and a large sum of my men are either dead, or wounded. This was all just a major fuck-up," Hondo yelled in frustration. "Don't worry Hondo, the Republic will compensate for the damages to your base. After all, this is technically because of the Clone Wars," Obi-Wan said. Hondo calmed down when he heard that sentence from Obi-Wan, and he once again regretted trying to drug the two Jedi. "Seems like they're leaving," Obi-Wan stated, staring into the sky. Everyone else stared into the sky, watching, as the massive form of the Susanoo ascended into heavens above. Once the Executor-class vessel reached proper altitude, the massive ship shot off into hyperspace, the only evidence of its presence on Florum being the devastated base of the pirates, and massive crater that was formed thanks to Blanc. Not to mention the scattered parts of destroyed assassin droids, dead bodies, and charred tanks. "You're filing the report to the council," Anakin told Obi-Wan, deadpanning towards his master, as he absolutely refused to be the one to tell the council of the events that happened on the planet. Obi-Wan could only sigh. "Dang it Blanc, why do you get all the fun?" a girl practically yelled. She was wearing a large sweater/hoodie dress. She wore a deep purple dress with lilac lining along the bottom, center, top, and pockets, along with white spiked edging at the hem. She wears a white, short jacket over this with a big end button, purple plug-like strings, and purple lining, and buckles on each shoulder sleeve. Her choker remains the same, along with her socks and shoes. On her wrist she has white bracelets with a soft spiked material, and small powder blue spots in the center. Like Blanc, the girl was petite, having a slight pudgy face. She was a fair-skinned girl with light purple eyes and a matching shade of hair. It was shoulder-length, with somewhat messy bangs with many strands sticking up, and few framing her face. She also wore two gamepad-shaped hair clips. Blanc merely looked at the screen projection of the girl with a blank expression. Her dull blue eyes expressed the smallest amount of annoyance. "Shut up Neptune, you're too loud," Blanc murmured. Neptune pouted slightly at her fellow goddess, before a bright grin appeared on her face. Did Nera say anything about me? Where is he? How's he doing? Will I get to see him soon? I wanna see Nero," she exclaimed, after she was done asking Blanc questions. Blanc's eye twitched, and she sighed, as he remembered that Neptune was very affectionate to Naruto, as well. "He's doing fine," Blanc answered neutrally, not wanting to answer Neptune's questions. "Really? That's great," Neptune exclaimed with a small cheer, bright purple eyes shining at the mere mention of the blonde. "Can I speak with him? Can I? She asked loudly, as if Naruto would wish to speak with someone like Neptune, when he can easily speak with someone as regal as me. A haughty voice spoke out, as another screen appeared next to Neptune's. The screen revealed a pale fair-skinned girl with very long black hair about waist length, worn up in long pigtails with two-piece black and blue ribbons. Her bangs are neatly combed, framing her face, and she has very noticeable red eyes. Noir wears a fancy dress consisting of dark blue, white, red, and small amounts of gold lining and buttons. The dress part is covered in red with black spiked lining cloth, while the uppi part is white, along with the skirt, which has black lining on both layers. Behind this is a blue bow, matching a smaller one worn around her neck attached to a black and white collar. In the center is a gold piece. Noir, Neptune yelled cheerfully, the insult going over her head. Only you can ignore an indirect insult, Noir stated almost fondly. Neptune gasped. Noir's being peppy. Noir spurred slightly. Shut up, Neptune. You can be such a child. You irresponsible twerp. She was insulted. Mao, Noir's so mean. Neptune whined childishly. Neptune, shut up, Blanc murmured. Neptune gasped, as if struck, dramatically holding a hand over her heart. Oh no, Noir and Blanc are teaming up on me for critical hit points, she said dramatically. Idiot, Blanc murmured blankly, as Noir sighed. So tell me, Blanc, how is Naruto doing? I haven't seen or heard from him, and you guys since your visit to Neptunia 4 months ago, Noir said coolly. Blanc slightly narrowed her eyes at Noir's not-so-hidden interest in Naruto. She gripped the edge of her console slightly, biting her lip. I want to hear about Naruto. Come on, Blanc. It's not fair that you're hogging him all to yourself, Neptune whined, waving her arms around. Blanc's eye twitched, as she gazed blankly at her fellow goddess. Sometimes she wondered how Neptune was a goddess. She could be so childish and immature at times. He's doing fine. We recently finished a mission. He was injured, but nothing serious. It's already completely healed, Blanc answered. That's a relief, Noir murmured, as her worry dissipated when Blanc said Naruto's wound had already healed. Hearing the blonde was fine was a large relief to her. Neptune's reaction was much different. Naruto was injured, she exclaimed. Where is he? Naru, come here so I can kiss your boo-boo away, Neptune yelled, her lips puckering up. Within a few moments Neptune began giggling pervertedly, her eyes turning misty, as she had unique imaginations of Naruto, one of which involved her in a nurse's outfit while Naruto was her patient. Meanwhile across the hall Naruto felt a shiver run down his spine. Neptune, get your head out of the gutter, Noir sternly said, teeth grit, and eye twitching. Neptune, you damn idiotic brat, Blanc murmured coldly. It took a minute or two, but Neptune stopped having her fantasy, and she sheepishly apologized to her fellow goddess. In all seriousness, how did Naruto get injured? Noir asked. Jedi, Blanc answered, a hint of anger in her tone, her eyes flashing in hatred. Ah yes, the Jedi, Noir murmured stiffly. The so-called peacekeepers of the galaxy, she said, recalling the dislike Blanc had for the Jedi in general. Not to mention the things Naruto and Madara told them about the Jedi. Suffice to say, she didn't hate them, but she definitely didn't like them either. Seriously, who forbade attachment of any kind? Man, those Jedi are real big part poopers, aren't they? Neptune exclaimed loudly, stomping her feet. Those Jedi really are troublesome, Noir murmured, feeling a sense of protectiveness over a certain blonde. Let's hope you don't encounter any more Jedi for a while, she told Blanc. Blanc nodded. No need to worry, Naruto and Madara are gonna be taking missions from several different clients. Most missions we receive from the Separatists involve the chance of encountering Jedi. After the completion of our last mission, Naruto doesn't want to see someone using the Force. Noir nodded. So long as Naruto was safe, she said. Neptune gasped. Noir has a crush on Naru. Noir has a crush on Naru, she cheered, annoying Blanc thoroughly, and making Noir sputter. I do not have a crush on him, the black-haired goddess said in embarrassment. It's okay, Noir, Neptune said with a large grin. I'm willing to share Naru. We can even have a threesome, she said without shame, making Noir heat up like a tomato. Blanc grit her teeth as she glared at her computer screen. What makes you think Naruto is yours? She asked, seething slightly, angry at the thought of Neptune saying Naruto belonged to her. Neptune had better find her own, damn it. Neptune looked at Blanc in confusion, her head tilted slightly. Finally, realization dawned on Neptune's face. Blanc has a crush on Naruto, she squealed. The three of us can be harem sisters, she said excitedly. The mouse that Blanc was using suddenly ended up crushed in her hand, as she growled. Her eyes expressed raw anger, as she gritted her teeth. Her face turned red in anger and embarrassment. Noir's blush could have made Tomato jealous, as she sputtered heavily. What's going through your head, Neptune? She asked. No, don't answer that. I don't want to know. Neptune, get your head out of the gutter, Blanc said with a scowl, replacing her mouse. Neptune giggled. I was only joking, she said, the last part said in a small whisper. What was that? Blanc asked dangerously. Nothing, Neptune said defensively. Noir sighed. Seriously, Neptune, she murmured. Neptune only grinned. Sis, I got some documents that need signing, a voice yelled out in the background of Noir's screen. Coming, Noir yelled back. Well, Neptune, Blanc Duty calls. I await your next visit, Blanc, and do tell Naruto to stay over at last station the next time he comes. With that said, Noir's screen went blank, as a message saying she logged off appeared on screen. It's just us, Blanc, Neptune said excitedly. Blanc was just about to click the log off button, before a voice in the background of Neptune's screen was heard. Neptune, get over here, and get to your work, yelled a high-pitched voice, sounding incredibly loud for something that sounded as if it were so small. Oh, Histoire found me, Neptune said with a startled expression. Gotta go, bye. Neptune, with that last yelled, Neptune yelped, as her screen went blank, a message saying she logged off. Blanc smirked slightly at Neptune's new problem. She turned off her console, she looked out the window of the bridge. The dozens of stars flying past them, as they were still in hyperspace. Well, it seems Neptune is still the same. Blanc turned, and Naruto leaned against the wall. Blanc blinked. How long were you there? She asked. Naruto smiled slightly, as he stood. It seems Neptunia is doing well in the hands of Noir, Neptune, and Vert. That's a relief, he said, turning his gaze out the window. You didn't answer my question, Blanc murmured. Naruto chuckled softly. He glanced at Blanc, his eyes staring into hers. What makes you think Naruto is yours? Naruto quotes. Blanc blushed, and she shyly kept the blonde's gaze. Tell me, Blanc, who do I belong to? He asked, a slight smile on his face. No one owns you, Blanc murmured, but her thoughts said differently. You belong to me, she thought possessively. Naruto chuckled again. Is that so? He murmured, as he turned his gaze out the window. Shyly, Blanc stood, and moved next to the blonde, staring at the window, as she glanced at his taller form every now and then. Feeling her hat being removed from her head, she looked up, and saw Naruto holding her hat, while his hand ran through her sandy brown hair. His hand ran through her hair for a few more moments, Blanc enjoying, as he did so. Naruto stopped, Blanc feeling a sting of disappointment, and placed her hat back on her head. Blanc Naruto couldn't even begin a sentence, as Madara entered the bridge. Naruto, brat, he greeted me casually. Uncle, Naruto murmured blankly. Bastard, Blanc insulted, irritated in her eyes. Are we still in hyperspace? Madara asked. Naruto nodded yes. Right now we are just flying the ship in a circle. We have no proper destination. Do you have one? Naruto asked, tilting his head slightly. Madara grinned. Damn straight I do, he said. Blanc, type in the coordinates for Dantooine, he ordered. Blanc sent Madara a glare, but she typed in the coordinates nonetheless. What's on Dantooine? Naruto asked. Madara grinned at his nephew. We are going hunting, he said, almost cheerfully. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Who's the target? How much is he worth? Jargist Mundo. Recently reported to be on Dantooine. His head is worth 15,000, Madara answered. Naruto nodded, and turned his gaze out the window. Did Sidious pay us? Yep, 530,000 credits transferred into our account, the black-haired Mandalorian answered. Naruto nodded. The coordinates have been set, Blanc stated, taking her spot next to Naruto. Good, Madara said curtly, grinning out the window. Blanc gazed out the window, the dozens of stars still speeding past them. She glanced at Naruto, finding him smiling out the window, as the stars reflected off his eyes. Blanc smiled slightly, and she subtly scooted closer to the blonde. Madara glanced at the two, and he felt a smirk grace his face. He turned his gaze back out the window. As he did so, he saw something over the corner of his eye. Turning his head to the left, he saw the image of a red-haired woman by his side, smiling, as she gazed upon the two forms of Naruto and Blanc. Her hair was red and long, reaching past her waist and stopping at her knees. Her bangs were long and stopped at her chest, while the rest were held to the side with a black hair clip. Her eyes were amethyst purple, and they sparkled beautifully. She wore dark forest green Mandalorian armor, the bottom half consisting of robes just like his and Naruto's. Kushina, little sister, Madara murmured softly. The image of the woman turned her head towards him and grinned cheekily at the older man. Flashing Madara the peace sign, Kushina turned, and her image disappeared as she moved away. Madara smiled softly and turned his gaze out the window. It seems you're watching over us, he murmured with a small sigh. Don't worry, Kushina, I kept my promise. I raised Naruto as best I could, and I can only now guide as he walks forward. However, I'll be with him every step of the way. After all, Madara stopped that train of thought. After all, Naruto had never expressed an interest in such a thing. Besides, Naruto already seemed happy enough. If Naruto was happy, then so was Madara. After all, his nephew was one of the main reasons he lived for now. He and Vert were the only ones he loved dearly. He would protect him, but he won't baby him either. It was his job, as an uncle, and he was going to fulfill it. But in the meantime, hey Blanc, when are you actually gonna start growing? I can't take you seriously when I talk to you, no. Madara started with a grin. What did you say, you bastard? Blanc screamed in rage with her hammer materializing. Her bangs blocked her eyes from view, as her teeth turned triangular. a single glowing red eye being exposed. Madara grinned widely, as he chuckled, wanting to piss off Blanc as much as he could before Naruto stopped him. Judging from Naruto's twitching eye, that would be soon time to milk it for what it was worth. Sometimes I wonder if you're just a little kid pretending to be a goddess. Come here, bastard. Crash. It felt good being alive. Crash, crash, crash. Try harder to washboard. Crash. Uncle. Yep, just another day aboard the Susanoo. Thanks for watching my video, and make sure to check out the author of this fanfic. Link is in the description. See you next time. Till then, sayonara.